Tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Mason Family. Jack Mason sat in his pickup truck outside the modest suburban home he'd purchased 7 years ago, reluctant to turn off the engine. 3 months of deployment in Eastern Europe had left him bone-tired, but something else kept him from walking through his front door. The text from his wife Diane had been brief. Welcome home. Mia can't wait to see you. Nothing about her missing him. Nothing about their anniversary last month. Just another in a growing line of disconnected communications. At 41, Jack had spent nearly 20 years in the military, the last 12 in Special Forces. The skills that made him exceptional at his job, patience, observation, tactical thinking, had begun bleeding into his personal life. He noticed the small inconsistencies in Diane's stories, the growing emotional distance, and the increasingly hollow sound of her laughter on their video calls. Jack finally killed the engine and grabbed his duffel bag. Whatever problems existed between him and Diane could wait until tomorrow. Tonight was for Mia, his 8-year-old daughter, the center of his universe. The house was quiet when he entered, too quiet for 6:30 in the evening. Usually, Mia would be practicing piano or watching TV, filling the space with her boundless energy. "Hello," Jack called out, dropping his bag in the entryway. Footsteps rushed down the stairs, and Mia appeared, her blonde hair flying behind her as she launched herself into his arms. "Daddy, you're finally home," she squealed as Jack lifted her, spinning her around. "There's my sunshine," Jack said, his smile genuine for the first time in months. "Where's Mom?" Mia's expression dimmed slightly. "She had to go out. Work stuff. She said she'd be back for dinner." Jack nodded, hiding his disappointment. Diane worked as a real estate agent, and emergency showings weren't uncommon. Still, she'd known exactly when he'd be home. "Is Warren with you?" Mia asked, her eyes scanning the empty hallway behind him. Jack frowned. "Who's Warren?" "Mom's friend," Mia replied casually. "He comes over sometimes when you're away." Jack kept his expression neutral despite the sudden tightness in his chest. "I don't know any Warren. Is he a work friend?" Mia shrugged. "I guess. He brings Mom wine, and they talk a lot after I go to bed." Jack swallowed hard. "How about you show me what you've been working on at school while we wait for Mom?" As Mia led him to the kitchen table covered with her artwork, Jack's mind was already calculating, assessing, planning, just as he'd been trained to do in hostile territory. Across town, Diane Mason sat across from Warren Blake in a dimly lit restaurant, twisting her wedding ring nervously. "You need to make a decision, Diane," Warren said, his voice low and intense. At 36, Warren was 5 years younger than Diane and worked in the same real estate office. His dark hair and confident demeanor had drawn her in during a period when Jack's absences had become too much to bear. "Jack's home now, and you can't keep this up forever." "I know," Diane whispered, guilt and confusion warring within her. "I just need more time. Mia adores her father, and I can't just blow up her world overnight." Warren's eyes darkened. "What about us? What about what I need?" "I've been patient, Diane, but patience has its limits." Unknown to either of them, this conversation would set in motion a chain of events neither could have anticipated. Back home, as Jack tucked Mia into bed, he noticed a drawing on her nightstand. It showed 3 figures, a small blonde girl, a brown-haired woman, and a tall man with dark hair, not Jack's military short light brown. "Is this Warren?" Jack asked, keeping his voice casual. Mia nodded sleepily. "He doesn't like me much," she mumbled. "He's nice when Mom's looking, but his eyes get scary when she's not." Jack kissed her forehead, his protective instincts flaring. "Don't worry, sunshine. Everything's going to be okay." By the time Diane returned home at 9:30, Jack had formulated the beginnings of a plan. Not for confrontation, not yet, but for information. "Sorry I'm late," Diane said, avoiding his eyes as she hung up her coat. Emergency showing turned into an offer. "We needed to get the paperwork done." Jack smiled, playing the role of the unsuspecting husband. "That's great, babe. Congratulations." As they moved around each other in the kitchen, the familiarity of 12 years of marriage mixing uncomfortably with the distance that had grown between them, Jack noticed the faint smell of unfamiliar cologne clinging to Diane's clothes. "How about a proper welcome home this weekend?" Jack suggested. "We could drop Mia at your mom's and have the house to ourselves." The flash of panic in Diane's eyes confirmed his suspicions before she recovered with a tight smile. "Sure, that sounds nice. I'll call Mom tomorrow." That night, as Diane slept beside him, Jack stared at the ceiling, his training kicking in. If this were a mission, he'd need reconnaissance, evidence, and a clear extraction plan. The fact that he was thinking about his marriage in tactical terms should have bothered him, but instead, it brought clarity. But there was something else gnawing at him: Mia's comment about Warren's scary eyes. If this man was potentially a threat to his daughter, the situation demanded more immediate attention. Chapter 2: The Unraveling. Jack spent the next week establishing what appeared to be his new home routine. He mentioned a possible security consulting job that would keep him busy during business hours, giving Diane the impression he wouldn't be around during the day. In reality, he was conducting careful surveillance. He placed discrete cameras in the common areas of the house. Nothing in bedrooms or bathrooms, just the living room, kitchen, and entryways. He installed a simple GPS tracker on Diane's car and set up monitoring software on the family computer. On Tuesday, while supposedly at a job interview, Jack followed Diane to a coffee shop where she met Warren Blake. From his position across the street, Jack took photos with a telephoto lens, capturing their intimate body language and the moment Warren's hand lingered on Diane's thigh under the table. A background check on Warren revealed concerning information. He had no criminal record, but he'd changed jobs frequently, moving from one real estate office to another across 3 states in the past 8 years. There were gaps in his employment history that didn't align with his claimed career trajectory. More troubling was what Jack found when he dug deeper: 2 restraining orders from ex-girlfriends that had been filed and later dropped. The women had moved away shortly afterward, making Jack wonder if they'd been threatened or paid off. By Thursday, Jack had confirmed that Diane and Warren were having an affair, but his concern had shifted primarily to Warren's character and the potential threat he posed to Mia. That evening, Mia's second-grade teacher, Ms. Parker, called the house. "Mr. Mason, I'm sorry to bother you at home, but I wanted to discuss something about Mia," she began hesitantly. "Is everything okay?" Jack asked, immediately alert. "She's been more withdrawn lately. Today, during our feelings exercise, she drew a picture of what she called Mom's friend standing outside her bedroom door, and it seemed to upset her. When I asked about it, she said he makes her uncomfortable, but she's afraid to tell her mom." Jack's blood ran cold. "Thank you for letting me know, Miss Parker. I'll talk with Mia tonight." After dinner, Jack took Mia for ice cream, creating a safe space away from home to talk. "Sunshine, you know you can tell me anything, right?" he asked as Mia worked on her chocolate sundae. She nodded, chocolate smeared on her chin. "Ms. Parker mentioned you drew a picture today of Warren outside your bedroom door. Has that happened?" Mia stared at her ice cream. "Sometimes when Mom thinks I'm asleep, Warren comes upstairs. He stands outside my door sometimes." Jack kept his voice gentle despite the rage building inside him. "Does he ever come into your room?" "He tried once," Mia said, her voice small. "But I pretended to wake up and said I needed Mom, so he left." Jack struggled to maintain his composure. "You did exactly the right thing, Mia. I'm so proud of you." He squeezed her hand. "Has anything else happened that made you uncomfortable?" "He took pictures of me at the pool when Mom wasn't looking," Mia said. "And he asks weird questions about when I take baths and stuff." Every instinct Jack had developed through years of identifying threats screamed danger. Warren Blake wasn't just a man having an affair with his wife. He was potentially grooming his daughter. That night, Jack made a decision. He would not confront Diane yet. That would only alert Warren and possibly drive their activities further underground. Instead, he needed to catch Warren in a compromising situation that would leave no doubt about his intentions. The next day, Jack installed additional security measures in Mia's room and throughout the house, including motion sensors that would alert his phone. He also placed a small panic button disguised as a bracelet charm on Mia's favorite bracelet, showing her how to press it if she ever felt scared. "It's like our special secret signal," he explained. "If you press it, it tells me you need me, and I'll come right away." Meanwhile, Diane was growing increasingly entangled with Warren, unaware of his disturbing interest in her daughter. Warren had been pushing harder for Diane to leave Jack, using a combination of romance and subtle manipulation. He's going to be deployed again eventually, Warren argued during one of their rendezvous at his apartment. Do you really want to keep living half a life? We could be a family, you, me, and Mia. The mention of Mia sent an uncomfortable chill through Diane, though she couldn't pinpoint why. Something about Warren's tone when he talked about her daughter had started to feel off, but she dismissed it as her own guilt clouding her judgment. I just need to find the right time, Diane insisted. Jack deserves better than having this conversation when he's just returned home. Warren's smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course, take your time. But remember, I won't wait forever. What Diane didn't know was that Warren had already begun making plans of his own. Plans that involved not just her, but Mia as well. Chapter 3. Dangerous Intentions. Sunday morning brought unexpected news. Diane's mother had fallen and needed surgery, requiring Diane to drive to Columbus to help. Jack offered to go with her, but she insisted he stay with Mia. It's nothing serious, just a broken wrist, Diane explained hurriedly as she packed an overnight bag. Mom just needs help with the paperwork and getting settled after the outpatient procedure. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon. Jack nodded, suspecting this might be a fabricated emergency to create time with Warren, but not wanting to tip his hand. Give your mom our love. After Diane left, Jack took Mia to the park, then for pizza, creating a normal, enjoyable father-daughter day. That evening, as he was helping Mia with her bath, his phone buzzed with a notification from one of the security cameras. Someone was approaching the front door. Jack checked the feed to see Warren Blake standing on his porch, looking nervously over his shoulder before using a key to unlock the front door. Jack's jaw clenched. Diane had given her lover a key to their home. Mia, remember that bracelet I gave you? Jack said, keeping his voice casual despite the adrenaline starting to pump through his system. I need you to keep it on, even during your bath, okay? I have to check something downstairs, but I'll be right back. Jack quickly helped Mia finish her bath and get into her pajamas, then tucked her into bed with strict instructions to press the panic button if anyone other than him came into her room. He positioned himself in the master bedroom with his laptop, monitoring the security feeds as Warren moved through the house downstairs. Warren spent several minutes rummaging through Jack's office, photographing documents and searching drawers. Then, disturbingly, he moved to Mia's bedroom door, standing outside for long moments before slowly turning the handle. Jack was already moving, silent and fast as he'd been trained. As Warren pushed Mia's door open, Jack came up behind him, wrapped an arm around his throat in a blood chokehold, and dragged him backward into the hallway. Make a sound, and I'll crush your windpipe, Jack whispered into Warren's ear as the man struggled. My daughter is sleeping, and you're going to tell me exactly what you're doing in my house. Jack dragged Warren downstairs and forced him into a chair in the kitchen, cable tying his wrist to the armrests. I have a key, Warren gasped once Jack released the chokehold. Diane gave it to me. We're together. I know about the affair, Jack said coldly. What I want to know is why you were entering my 8-year-old daughter's bedroom. Warren's eyes darted around, looking for an escape. I wasn't. I was just checking the house. Diane asked me to grab some things for her. In my daughter's bedroom? Jack leaned in close. The same daughter you've been photographing at the pool? The same one you ask about bath times. Fear flashed across Warren's face. She told you that? She's making things up. Kids do that. Jack's expression didn't change as he pulled out his phone and showed Warren footage from the hidden cameras. Warren standing outside Mia's room on previous occasions. Warren following Mia with his eyes when Diane wasn't looking. I've been watching you, Jack said, and I've done some digging. Those restraining orders in Denver and Phoenix? The women who suddenly moved away? I made some calls. They were both single mothers. Warren's face contorted with rage. You don't know anything. Diane doesn't love you anymore. She's leaving you for me. This isn't about Diane, Jack said, his voice deadly quiet. This is about my daughter. I want you to listen very carefully. You're going to leave this house and never contact my family again. I'm keeping all the evidence I've gathered, and if you ever come near Mia again, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are. Warren laughed, an ugly sound. Threats? Really? You think Diane will believe you over me? I've been her shoulder to cry on for months. You're nothing but a part-time husband who puts his military career above his family. By the time I'm done, you'll be lucky if you get supervised visitation with Mia. The threat to separate him from his daughter snapped something in Jack. His training had taught him to identify predators, and every instinct told him Warren Blake was dangerous, not just to his marriage, but to Mia. Before Jack could respond, his phone buzzed with an alert from Mia's panic button. His blood ran cold as he pulled up the security feed to see a clearly intoxicated Diane stumbling into Mia's bedroom, waking the girl and slurring something about packing a bag. Jack's world narrowed to a single focus, protecting his daughter. He zip-tied Warren's ankles to the chair and moved swiftly upstairs. In Mia's room, he found Diane ineffectually trying to help a confused and frightened Mia pack a small suitcase. "Diane, what are you doing?" Jack asked from the doorway. She spun around, nearly losing her balance. "Jack, we're just having girls' night at a hotel. Mom's surgery was canceled." "You're drunk," Jack said flatly. "And Warren Blake is downstairs tied to a chair after I caught him trying to enter Mia's room while she was sleeping." Diane's face went pale. "What? No, Warren wouldn't. He loves me, he wouldn't." "Daddy," Mia whimpered, running to Jack and wrapping her arms around his legs. "I don't want to go." Jack lifted Mia into his arms. "You're not going anywhere, sunshine. Mom's not feeling well right now. You can't keep my daughter from me," Diane slurred, anger replacing shock. "Warren told me you might try something like this. He warned me you'd make up lies about him when you found out about us." Jack's jaw tightened. "This isn't about us, Diane. This is about Mia's safety. Warren has a history with single mothers. He's been watching Mia, photographing her, asking about her bath times. He was entering her room tonight while she was sleeping." "You're lying," Diane insisted, though doubt crept into her voice. "Let me talk to him." "Go ahead," Jack said, not moving from his protective stance in front of Mia. "He's in the kitchen, but Mia stays with me." Diane stumbled downstairs, Jack following at a distance with Mia still in his arms. When they reached the kitchen, the chair was empty, cut zip ties on the floor. The back door stood open to the night. "See? You made the whole thing up," Diane accused, though her voice lacked conviction. Jack set Mia down behind him. "Check your phone," he said to Diane. "I sent you video clips while you were upstairs." Diane pulled out her phone, her hands shaking as she opened her messages. Jack had sent her footage of Warren standing outside Mia's room on multiple occasions, along with clips of her daughter's teacher discussing Mia's concerns. "This doesn't prove anything," Diane whispered, but the blood had drained from her face. Before Jack could respond, the lights in the house suddenly went out. Then came the sound of breaking glass from the living room, followed by heavy footsteps. "Get behind me," Jack ordered, pushing both Diane and Mia toward the pantry. "Lock yourselves in and call 911. Warren's voice came from the darkness of the living room. "You think you're so smart, don't you, Jack? Special Forces tough guy, but I've dealt with men like you before." Jack moved silently through the kitchen, his eyes already adjusted to the darkness. His training kicked in automatically: assess threats, control the environment, protect the innocent. The faint gleam of metal caught Jack's eye. Warren had returned with a weapon, likely a knife. "You should have just let her go," Warren continued, moving through the dark house. "We could have worked out a custody arrangement. But now I'll have to handle things differently." Jack positioned himself near the entrance to the living room, listening intently as Warren moved closer. The man was broadcasting his location with every word, every footstep. "Amateur." As Warren stepped into the kitchen, Jack struck. A quick blow to the wrist sent the knife clattering across the tile floor. Warren responded with surprising strength, tackling Jack against the counter. They grappled in the darkness, Warren fighting with the desperate fury of a man with nothing to lose, Jack with the control of his years of training. Warren landed a lucky blow to Jack's jaw, momentarily stunning him, then scrambled for the fallen knife. Jack recovered quickly, launching himself at Warren just as the man's fingers closed around the knife handle. They crashed into the living room, knocking over furniture as they struggled for control of the weapon. In the background, Jack could hear Mia crying and Diane's panicked voice on the phone with emergency services. Warren managed to slash Jack's forearm, drawing blood, but the wound only focused Jack's mind further. With a practiced move, he trapped Warren's knife hand and applied crushing pressure to the nerves, forcing the man to drop the weapon. Warren howled in pain and rage, thrashing wildly as Jack subdued him efficiency, twisting the man's arm behind his back and forcing him face down onto the floor. "It's over," Jack said, his voice deadly calm despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. Warren's response was to buck violently, throwing Jack off balance just enough to break free. Instead of fleeing, Warren lunged toward the pantry where Diane and Mia were hidden. Jack reacted instinctively. He grabbed the fallen knife and hurled it, piercing Warren's thigh. The man screamed and collapsed, blood pooling beneath him as he clutched at his leg. Flashing lights appeared outside as police cars pulled up to the house. Jack kept pressure on Warren, ensuring he couldn't move until officers burst through the door with weapons drawn. "He broke in with a knife," Jack explained calmly as officers secured the scene. "My wife and daughter are in the pantry. The man is injured but stable." As paramedics treated Warren and the police took statements, Jack held a trembling Mia while Diane sat shell-shocked on the couch. The officers found Warren's phone, which contained disturbing photos of Mia and other children, immediately elevating the case to a potential sex crimes investigation. Later that night, as Mia finally slept with Diane watching over her, Jack sat with Detective Reynolds in the kitchen. "He won't be a threat to your family anymore," Reynolds assured him. "The evidence on his phone alone is enough to put him away for a long time. And with the attack tonight, attempted assault with a deadly weapon adds more years." Jack nodded tiredly. "What about my wife? Will she face charges for bringing him into our home?" Reynolds sighed. "Based on statements, including hers, she appears to have been manipulated. She's cooperating fully, admitted to the affair, but insists she had no knowledge of his interest in your daughter. Unless evidence suggests otherwise, she likely won't face criminal charges." After the detective left, Jack found Diane sitting on their bed, eyes red from crying. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear I didn't know what he was. How he was looking at Mia." Jack stood in the doorway, emotional exhaustion competing with the physical toll of the fight. "Would you have believed me if I'd told you my suspicions earlier? Or would you have dismissed it as jealousy?" Diane couldn't meet his eyes. "I don't know. That's the problem," Jack said quietly. "You put our daughter in danger because you weren't paying attention, because you wanted to believe the best about him." "I'll never forgive myself," Diane said, fresh tears tracking down her face. "And I don't expect you to forgive me either." Jack looked at his wife, this woman he had loved for 12 years, the mother of his child, and felt nothing but a hollow ache. "Right now, all that matters is keeping Mia safe and helping her heal from this," he said. "Everything else can wait." As he left the room to check on his daughter one more time, Jack knew that while the immediate danger had passed, the real challenge was just beginning. Rebuilding trust, if that was even possible, would be far harder than subduing Warren Blake. And the fact remained, his wife had been willing to take their daughter away in the middle of the night at the behest of a man who meant the child harm. That wasn't something Jack could simply forget, no matter what came next. Act 2, Aftermath. Chapter 4, Broken Foundations. 3 weeks after what the family now referred to simply as the incident, Jack sat across from his lawyer, Vivian Torres, in her downtown office. The evidence against Warren Blake continued to mount as the investigation expanded. Police had found connections to known child exploitation networks on his devices, and 2 other families had come forward with similar stories of Warren insinuating himself into their lives. "He's looking at 20 years minimum," Vivian explained, pushing her glasses up her nose. "His lawyer is already talking plea deal, but the prosecutor isn't in a generous mood. The evidence is overwhelming." Jack nodded. Warren's fate was sealed, but his own future remained uncertain. "And the divorce?" Vivian opened another file. "Given the circumstances, we're in a strong position." Diane's admitted to the affair in her statement to police, and her actions that night, coming home intoxicated, attempting to remove Mia from the house, work in your favor for primary custody. She's still Mia's mother, Jack said quietly. Despite everything, he couldn't bring himself to completely sever Mia's relationship with Diane. The girl had experienced enough trauma already. Of course, Vivian agreed. But the court will consider the lapse in judgment. The arrangement we're proposing gives you primary physical custody with Diane having supervised visitation initially, transitioning to regular visitation if things go well. When Jack returned home, he found Mia and her new therapist, Dr. Landry, finishing a session at the kitchen table. The child psychologist had been working with Mia twice weekly since the attack, helping her process the confusing and frightening events. She's doing remarkably well, Dr. Landry told Jack privately after Mia went upstairs to play. Children are resilient, especially when they have a secure attachment figure they can trust, which she clearly has in you. What about her relationship with Diane? Jack asked, keeping his voice low. Diane had moved to a nearby apartment the week after the incident, recognizing that her presence was complicating Mia's recovery. Dr. Landry's expression grew more measured. It's complicated. Mia loves her mother, but she's confused and hurt by what happened. She's expressed worry that her mother chose Warren over her. The therapist paused. Have you and Diane discussed long-term arrangements? Jack sighed. We're working through it with lawyers. I don't want to keep Mia from her mother, but I can't trust Diane's judgment right now. That's understandable, Dr. Landry said. I'd recommend continuing the current arrangement for now. Scheduled visits in neutral locations, gradually increasing duration as Mia becomes more comfortable. Family therapy would be beneficial when you're both ready. Later that evening, Jack drove Mia to meet Diane at a nearby restaurant for dinner. Their twice-weekly ritual now. These supervised visits were awkward, but necessary as they navigated their new reality. As Jack watched Mia and Diane interact over pizza, he noticed how Diane seemed almost afraid to touch her daughter, maintaining a physical distance that hadn't existed before. Mia, for her part, was polite but reserved, nothing like the effusive child she'd been around her mother in the past. Daddy said we might go camping next weekend, Mia announced, breaking a silence that had stretched too long. Diane forced a smile. That sounds fun, sweetie. Your dad is great at camping. You could come too, Mia said hesitantly, then looked at Jack with uncertainty. The invitation caught both adults off guard. Diane glanced at Jack, who kept his expression neutral despite his surprise. That's thoughtful of you to offer, Mia, Diane said carefully. But I think this should be special time just for you and Daddy. The disappointment on Mia's face was subtle but unmistakable. Jack realized that despite everything, Mia was trying to reconstruct her shattered family in the only way her 8-year-old mind knew how. After dinner, when Mia went to the restroom, Jack and Diane had a rare moment alone. How are the new anxiety medications working? Jack asked, aware that Diane had been struggling with panic attacks since learning the full extent of Warren's predatory behavior. Diane twisted her napkin between her fingers. Better. The nightmares aren't as frequent. She looked up, meeting his eyes directly for the first time in weeks. Jack, I know you might never forgive me, but I need you to know I would have died before knowingly letting anyone hurt her. Jack believed her, which made the situation all the more tragic. Diane hadn't been malicious, just blind, selfish, and careless. In some ways, that was harder to reconcile than deliberate malice would have been. I know, he said finally, but good intentions don't change what happened, or what could have happened if things had gone differently that night. Back at home, after tucking Mia into bed, Jack sat on his porch with a glass of bourbon and mulled over the surprising invitation Mia had extended to Diane. Despite his anger and disappointment, he couldn't ignore the reality that Diane was still Mia's mother, and Mia clearly wanted to repair the relationship. The following morning brought an unexpected visitor. Ben Nelson, Jack's former commanding officer and longtime friend, stood on the porch with coffee and donuts. Thought you could use some breakfast and a friendly ear, Ben said gruffly, his weathered face showing concern beneath his usual stoic expression. They sat at the kitchen table while Mia watched cartoons in the living room, and Jack filled Ben in on the latest developments. So what's the endgame here? Ben asked bluntly after listening. Full custody? Reconciliation? Clean break? Jack scrubbed a hand over his face. I don't know. The lawyer thinks I can get primary custody easily given the circumstances. But Mia invited Diane to come camping with us next weekend, which threw me for a loop. Ben nodded thoughtfully. Kids want their parents together, even when it's not possible. Part of me thinks I should try to forgive Diane for Mia's sake, Jack admitted. But another part can't get past the fact that she brought a predator into our home, gave him a key, and was about to take Mia away with her that night. Those aren't mutually exclusive positions, Ben pointed out. You can forgive Diane without trusting her with Mia's safety again. At least not right away. As they talked, Jack's phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. Call me ASAP. New development. Excusing himself, Jack stepped onto the porch to return the call. We have a problem, Vivian said without preamble. Warren Blake made bail this morning. Jack felt his blood run cold. How? I thought the judge denied bail. New judge, new hearing. His family posted a substantial property bond, and his attorney successfully argued he's not a flight risk due to the tracking monitor and his medical condition. Jack remembered the knife wound to Warren's thigh, a wound that had prevented the man from reaching Mia that night. What about the restraining order? Still in place, Vivian assured him. He's not allowed within 500 feet of any of you or your home. But Jack, there's more. He's alleging you attacked him without provocation, claiming he was at your house at Diane's invitation and never attempted to enter Mia's room. That's bullshit, Jack growled. We have the security footage, which his attorney is trying to get thrown out as unlawfully obtained evidence, since Diane didn't know about the cameras. Vivian sighed. Look, the criminal case against him for the child exploitation material is solid. This is just a desperate attempt to muddy the waters for the assault charges. After hanging up, Jack returned to the kitchen, his expression tight with controlled anger. Warren made bail, he told Ben, keeping his voice low so Mia wouldn't overhear. Ben's eyes hardened. Do you think he'll violate the restraining order? Men like that don't respect legal boundaries, Jack said. I need to increase security here and make sure Mia's school knows not to release her to anyone but me. As they discussed precautions, Jack's phone buzzed again. This time it was Diane. Did you hear? What do we do now? Jack stared at the message, noting the we. The first time since the separation that Diane had framed their situation as a shared problem rather than parallel struggles. Despite everything, when faced with a threat to Mia, Diane's protective instincts had finally surfaced. I'm handling it, he texted back. Stay at your apartment. I'll update you later. Ben watched Jack with knowing eyes. You're not just going to sit back and wait for the legal system, are you? Jack shook his head slowly. Warren Blake is a predator who's already demonstrated he's willing to use violence. I'm not going to give him a chance to hurt my family again. What do you need? Ben asked simply. Eyes on Blake. Information on his movements, associates, routine, and maybe backup depending on what he does next. Ben nodded, pulling out his phone. I know a few guys who owe me favors. Discreet surveillance, off the books. As they worked out details, Jack felt a familiar calm settling over him, the focused alertness that had served him well during missions. Warren Blake had underestimated him once. It wouldn't happen again. Meanwhile, across town, Warren sat in his apartment, leg propped up on a cushion as he seethed with humiliation and rage. The tracker on his ankle was a constant reminder of his current restrictions, but his mind was already working on ways around them. They think this is over, he muttered to himself, swallowing another painkiller. But they have no idea what I'm capable of when I'm crossed. On his coffee table lay a floor plan of Jack's house, a copy Diane had given him months ago when discussing potential renovations. Beside it was a school newsletter with Mia's class schedule highlighted. And on his phone, saved messages from Diane professing her love, messages he planned to use to drive a final wedge between her and Jack. Warren didn't just want revenge. He wanted to destroy the Mason family completely, and he wasn't going to let a tracking anklet stop him. Chapter 5. Countermoves. By mid-April, a fragile new normal had established itself. Jack had installed additional security measures at the house, enrolled Mia in a different school closer to home, and established a communication protocol with Diane that prioritized Mia's safety. The investigation into Warren continued, with more disturbing evidence emerging as digital forensics experts analyzed his devices. What Jack didn't know was that Warren had been methodically working to undermine him from afar. Unable to approach the Mason family directly due to the restraining order and ankle monitor, Warren had instead focused on gathering leverage and manipulating others to do his dirty work. His first move was reaching out to Diane under the guise of closure. "I know we can never be together now," he wrote in an email sent through a lawyer, ostensibly for legal purposes. "But there are things you should know about Jack and the night of the incident that might change how you see things." Against her better judgment, Diane responded, asking what he meant. The exchange began a slow drip of carefully crafted half-truths and outright lies designed to plant seeds of doubt about Jack's stability and intentions. Warren's second move involved an old acquaintance from his real estate days, Cole Weathers, a man with his own grudge against Jack from a property deal gone sour years earlier. Cole was all too happy to help gather information on Jack's movements and routine, staying just outside the restraining order boundary to avoid legal complications. Meanwhile, Jack was conducting his own counterintelligence. Ben's contacts had established surveillance on Warren, documenting his visitors and movements while seemingly respecting the legal restrictions placed on him. "He's playing it smart," Ben reported during one of their regular check-ins. "No direct contact, no obvious violations. But he's had meetings with some shady characters, including that real estate agent who tried to screw you on the lake property deal." Jack frowned. "Cole Weathers? I haven't thought about him in years." "Well, he's thinking about you," Ben replied. "He's been watching your house from just beyond the property line. Not close enough to violate any orders, but definitely surveillance." This information prompted Jack to adjust his security measures and vary his routines. He also decided it was time to bring Diane more fully into the loop. They met at a neutral location, a park where Mia could play on the playground while they talked privately on a nearby bench. "Warren's been contacting me," Diane admitted after Jack explained his concerns. "Through his lawyer, supposedly for case-related issues, but the messages always contain personal elements. Subtle things about you, about us." Jack kept his expression neutral despite the flare of anger. "What kind of things?" Diane looked away, watching Mia on the swings. "Suggestions that you've been violent before, that your military background makes you unstable, that you're using Mia to punish me. And do you believe any of that?" Jack asked quietly. Diane finally met his gaze. "No, but he's persuasive. If I didn't know better, if I hadn't seen what happened that night, I might start to doubt myself." This candor from Diane was new, a sign that perhaps she was finally seeing Warren for who he truly was. Jack decided to trust her with more information. "He's having you watched," Jack said. "And me. A man named Cole Weathers has been surveilling our movements." Diane paled. "The real estate agent? I remember him. He was at the office once arguing with Warren. I thought they hated each other." "Apparently they found common ground in disliking me," Jack said dryly. "Look, Diane, I think Warren is planning something. The surveillance, the manipulation through messages, he's gathering information and trying to create division between us." "What do we do?" Diane asked, fear evident in her voice. "First, we present a united front where Mia is concerned," Jack said firmly. "No matter what happens between us, we need to agree that her safety comes first. Second, document everything, every message, unusual encounter, car that passes your apartment too many times." As they talked, Jack's phone buzzed with a text from Ben. "Blake's tracker shows him at home, but my guy swears he just saw him at the mall. Could be equipment malfunction or something worse." Jack's instincts immediately sharpened. If Warren had found a way to circumvent his monitoring, the threat level had just escalated significantly. "I need to get Mia home," he told Diane, showing her the message. "If he's figured out how to fool the ankle monitor, none of the legal protections mean anything." Diane's face hardened with resolve. "I'm coming with you. If he's coming after Mia, I want to be there." Jack hesitated only briefly before nodding. Having Diane at the house would be complicated emotionally, but it made tactical sense to have another adult watching over Mia. As they drove home, Jack called Vivian to report the potential monitoring violation, then contacted Detective Reynolds with the same information. Both promised to investigate immediately, but Jack knew bureaucratic wheels turned slowly. By the time officials confirmed whether Warren had actually tampered with his tracker, it might be too late. At the house, Jack implemented full security protocols, checking all entry points, activating additional monitoring systems, and preparing go bags in case they needed to leave quickly. Diane watched with a mixture of awe and dismay as Jack efficiently transformed their family home into what essentially amounted to a fortress. "Has it been like this the whole time?" she asked quietly as Jack checked the reinforcements on the back door. "Pretty much," Jack admitted. "I didn't want to scare Mia, so most of it is subtle, but yes." Diane looked stricken. "I had no idea. I thought maybe you were being paranoid." "It's not paranoia when the threat is real," Jack said without looking up from his work. That evening, as Mia slept upstairs with both her panic button bracelet and a new motion-detecting baby monitor, Jack and Diane sat in the kitchen reviewing the security footage from the past week. "There," Jack said, pointing to a car that had passed the house multiple times. "That's Cole's Audi. He's been mapping our patterns, probably reporting back to Warren." Diane shook her head in disbelief. "I can't believe I fell for Warren's act." Looking back, there were so many signs, so many moments that should have raised red flags. "He's a practiced manipulator," Jack said, not unkindly. "That's what predators do. They identify vulnerabilities and exploit them." "My vulnerability was feeling abandoned," Diane admitted quietly. "All those deployments, all those months of solo parenting. I resented you for having a purpose, a mission, while I felt stuck in place." Jack stopped scrolling through footage to look at her. It was the most honest she'd been about the roots of her dissatisfaction. "I could have done better," he acknowledged. "Been more present when I was home. Recognized how hard it was for you." This moment of mutual recognition, of shared responsibility for the breakdown of their marriage, didn't erase what had happened, but it created a small bridge of understanding between them. The moment was interrupted by Jack's phone ringing. "Ben." "Blake's not at his apartment," Ben said without preamble. "The tracker is there, but he's removed it somehow. My guy followed a car from the underground garage. It's heading in your direction." Jack immediately moved to action. "How long?" 20 minutes, maybe less," Ben replied. "I'm 10 minutes out with backup." Jack ended the call and turned to Diane. "Warren's coming. We need to move Mia now." They had practiced this drill. Jack had insisted on it despite Diane initially thinking it excessive. Now, she moved with focused urgency, grabbing the go bag while Jack went to wake Mia. "Sunshine, remember our special game?" Jack asked gently as he roused a sleepy Mia. "We need to play it right now. The quiet hide and seek one." Mia, still half asleep but sensing the tension, nodded and allowed Jack to carry her downstairs. Diane was already waiting by the hidden exit Jack had installed in the pantry, a modification that led to a neighbor's yard through a concealed tunnel. "Go with Mom," Jack instructed Mia, transferring her into Diane's arms. "Follow the path exactly like we practiced. Ben will meet you at the safe house." "You're not coming?" Diane asked, suddenly afraid. Jack checked his weapon, a 9mm pistol he'd legally owned for years, but had only recently started carrying in the house. "Someone needs to deal with Warren. He won't stop unless he's forced to." "Jack, don't," Diane pleaded. "Let the police handle it. Come with us." "The police won't get here in time," Jack said grimly. "And I'm not running while he's free to keep pursuing us. Go, now." As Diane reluctantly carried Mia through the concealed exit, Jack positioned himself in the darkened living room with a clear view of both the front and back entrances. He sent a quick text to Detective Reynolds with his suspicions about Warren's imminent arrival, then settled in to wait. He didn't have to wait long. 15 minutes later, a car pulled up half a block away, lights off. Through his night vision monocular, Jack observed two men exit the vehicle, Warren, moving with a slight limp, and Cole Weathers. Instead of approaching the front door, the men circled around toward the back of the property, clearly planning to enter through the less visible rear of the house. Jack smiled grimly. Predictable. When the sound of breaking glass came from the sunroom at the back of the house, Jack remained motionless, allowing the intruders to fully commit to the break-in. He had positioned remote cameras throughout the house, giving him a tactical advantage. He could track their movements while remaining unseen. Warren entered first, a pistol in his hand, scanning the darkened kitchen. Cole followed, carrying what appeared to be a duffel bag. "Remember, we grab the kid and go," Warren whispered. "Mason will do anything to get her back, including dropping the charges." "What about the wife?" Cole asked. Warren's face twisted with malice in the dim light. "She's collateral damage. She betrayed me, chose him over me after everything I did for her." Jack felt cold fury wash over him at the confirmation of their intentions. This was no longer just about revenge or intimidation. They had come to abduct his daughter, potentially harm his wife. The stakes couldn't be higher. He allowed them to move deeper into the house, watching through the camera feed as they cleared rooms one by one, growing increasingly confused and agitated at finding the house apparently empty. "They must have been warned," Cole said nervously. "Maybe we should bail." "No," Warren snarled. "They're here somewhere. The car's still in the garage, and Mason wouldn't leave it if they were running." As they approached the living room where Jack waited, he sent a final text to Ben. "Two armed intruders. Hostile intent confirmed. Engaging." Then he stepped out from behind his position, weapon raised. "Police are on their way, Warren. Put the gun down." Warren spun around, firing wildly in Jack's direction. The shot went wide, embedding itself in the wall as Jack dove for cover behind a heavy oak cabinet. "You're dead, Mason," Warren shouted, his voice unhinged with rage. "Then I'm going to find your precious daughter and finish what I started." The explicit threat eliminated any hesitation Jack might have felt. Warren Blake had just confirmed his worst intentions toward Mia, intentions Jack had suspected from beginning. Cole, apparently realizing he'd gotten in over his head, made a break for the back door. Jack let him go, focusing on the more dangerous threat. Warren was moving through the room, using furniture as cover as he worked his way toward Jack's position. "Did Diane tell you about all the times she cried on my shoulder?" Warren taunted, trying to provoke Jack into making a mistake. "How she said you were cold, absent, more married to the military than to her. How she wished she'd never had a child with you." Jack tuned out the provocations, focusing instead on Warren's movements, predicting his next position. When Warren paused to reload, Jack made his move, rolling to a new position that gave him a clear angle. "Drop it, Warren," Jack commanded. "Last chance." Warren responded by firing again, the bullet splintering inches from Jack's head. Jack returned fire, hitting Warren in the shoulder. The man screamed in pain and rage, but didn't drop his weapon, instead charging toward Jack's position with reckless abandon. In the split second before Warren rounded the cabinet, Jack made a tactical decision. He could retreat, possibly exposing himself to more danger, or he could stand his ground and potentially be forced to use lethal force. He chose a third option. As Warren appeared, Jack struck with stunning speed, disarming the man with a practiced move that sent the gun skittering across the floor. Warren, now weaponless but still dangerous, grappled with Jack, his face contorted with hatred. "I'll kill you," Warren gasped through gritted teeth, blood from his shoulder wound soaking his shirt. "Then I'll find them. You can't protect them forever." They struggled across the room, crashing into furniture. Despite his wound, Warren fought with the desperate strength of a cornered animal. He managed to grab a heavy crystal vase from a side table and smashed it against Jack's temple, momentarily stunning him. As Jack's vision swam, Warren staggered toward his fallen gun. Jack forced himself to focus through the pain, launching himself at Warren's legs in a tackle that sent them both crashing into the living room's large picture window. The glass shattered under their combined weight, and they tumbled onto the front lawn in a shower of broken shards. Warren landed badly, a large piece of glass slicing deep into his thigh. Ironically, the same leg Jack had wounded during their previous encounter. The man screamed in agony as blood pulsed from the severed artery. Jack, dazed but conscious, immediately applied pressure to the wound, instinctively working to save the life of the man who had just tried to kill him. "Help is coming," Jack said grimly as Warren's face grew pale from blood loss. You're going to live to stand trial. Warren's eyes burned with hatred even as shock began to set in. You think this is over? There are others who understand what needs to be done with girls like Mia. The implication sent ice through Jack's veins, but before he could respond, sirens wailed in the distance and headlights swept across the lawn as multiple vehicles converged on the house. Detective Reynolds was first on the scene, weapon drawn until he assessed the situation. Paramedics rushed to stabilize Warren, while officers secured the perimeter and began gathering evidence of the break-in. "We got your texts," Reynolds told Jack as a medic cleaned the gash on his temple. "Tracked Blake's ankle monitor, found it attached to his cat. He's looking at significant additional charges now. Attempted kidnapping, assault with a deadly weapon, violation of restraining order." Jack nodded tiredly. "There's more." He implied he's connected to others with similar interests. A network. Reynolds' expression darkened. "We'll dig into it. Based on what we've already found on his devices, it wouldn't surprise me." "Where are Diane and Mia?" "Safe house," Jack replied. "My former CO is with them." As the chaos of the crime scene investigation unfolded around him, Jack finally allowed himself to acknowledge the magnitude of what had just happened and what had nearly happened. Warren Blake had come to abduct his daughter, potentially harm his wife, and kill him. The man had been willing to destroy an entire family to satisfy his twisted desires and need for revenge. And most disturbing of all was his final implication, that he wasn't alone, that others like him existed who had taken an interest in Mia. The threat might not be over, even with Warren in custody. Jack pulled out his phone and called Ben. "We're secure," Ben reported. "Mia's asleep. Diane's a wreck, but holding it together. What's your status?" "Warren's in custody. Heading to surgery," Jack reported. "I'm fine. Minor injuries. But Ben, this might be bigger than we thought. I need you to stay with them while I follow up on something." Despite his exhaustion and the lingering effects of the concussion, Jack knew he couldn't rest. Not yet. Warren's ominous words suggested a wider threat, one that might still be lurking even with the primary predator contained. As the ambulance carrying Warren pulled away and investigators continued processing the scene, Jack stood in the shattered remnants of his home, more determined than ever to uncover the full extent of the danger to his family, and to eliminate it, whatever the cost. Chapter 6. Deeper Currents. The attack at the Mason home made local headlines, with initial reports characterizing it as a home invasion gone wrong. Detective Reynolds, recognizing the sensitivity of the case, managed to keep Warren's specific interest in Mia out of the press, focusing instead on the restraining order violation and assault charges. Jack spent the night at the hospital being monitored for his concussion, against his wishes but at Reynolds' insistence. By morning, he learned that Warren had survived surgery but remained in critical condition under police guard. Cole Weathers had been apprehended trying to flee the city and was now cooperating with investigators in exchange for leniency. Diane and Mia remained at the safe house, a small cabin owned by Ben's brother in the mountains just outside the city. When Jack arrived the following afternoon, he found Mia playing a board game with Ben, while Diane sat by the window, jumping at every sound from the surrounding forest. "Daddy!" Mia exclaimed, running to him. Jack winced slightly as her small body collided with his bruised ribs, but held her tightly. "Hey, sunshine, having fun with Uncle Ben. He lets me win at Monopoly," Mia whispered loudly, causing Ben to protest good-naturedly. Jack exchanged a look with Diane, whose relief at seeing him was evident despite the strain between them. After getting Mia settled back at her game, Jack spoke privately with Diane and Ben on the cabin's small porch. "Warren made it through surgery," Jack reported. "He's under guard and facing multiple felony charges now. Cole Weathers is singing like a canary, apparently trying to save his own skin." "What about what Warren said?" Diane asked, her voice tight with fear. "About others being interested in Mia?" Jack's jaw clenched. "Reynolds is investigating. They're going through Warren's contacts, devices, everything. But I'm not taking any chances. My buddy at the cybercrimes unit is helping unofficially," Ben added. Preliminary examination of Warren's cloud accounts shows communication with several unknown users who share similar proclivities. Diane made a small, broken sound. How did I not see it? How could I have been so blind? Jack didn't answer the rhetorical question. Instead, he outlined their next steps. The house isn't safe right now. Too much damage and potentially compromised. I've arranged for a rental property under Ben's name while we figure out our next move. Our next move? Diane questioned, catching the pronoun. Jack met her gaze steadily. Warren's attack has changed things. There may be a bigger threat out there, one targeting our daughter. Whatever issues exist between us, we need to present a united front. Ben, sensing the need for the couple to talk privately, excused himself to check on Mia. Once alone, Diane turned to Jack with tears in her eyes. I keep thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't been so vigilant. If you hadn't noticed Warren's interest in Mia. If you hadn't installed those cameras. But I did, Jack said simply. And we stopped him. No, you stopped him, Diane corrected. I was part of the problem. She wiped at her tears angrily. I brought him into our lives. I gave him access to our home, to Mia. I believed his lies over your concerns. Jack leaned against the porch railing, exhaustion from the past 24 hours catching up with him. Why? What did you see in him that made you trust him so completely? It was a question that had haunted him for weeks. Understanding Diane's vulnerability to Warren's manipulation might help protect against similar threats in the future. Diane was quiet for a long moment. Attention, she finally said. Validation. When you're deployed, I'm essentially a single parent. I handle everything alone, the house, Mia, my job. Warren made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in years. He acted impressed by everything I managed on my own, while simultaneously making me feel it was okay to need help, to be vulnerable. She laughed bitterly. Of course, now I see he was just identifying weaknesses, creating dependence. Classic predator tactics. Jack absorbed this, recognizing painful truths on both sides. His military career had created gaps in their relationship, spaces where someone like Warren could insert himself. And Diane, feeling unseen and unappreciated, had been susceptible to the attention. For what it's worth, Jack said after a while, I've always been impressed by how you manage everything during deployments. I just didn't say it enough. A tentative truce formed in that moment. Not forgiveness or reconciliation, but a recognition of shared vulnerabilities and mistakes that had led them to this point. The conversation was interrupted by Jack's phone. It was Reynolds. We found something on Weathers' phone, the detective said without preamble. GPS coordinates for a cabin near Lake Marshall. According to Weathers, it's where Warren was planning to take Mia. Jack's blood ran cold. Have you checked it out? Team's on the way now. But Jack, there's more. Weathers claims Warren talked about associates who would be meeting them there. He says he thought it was just buyer clients for a property showing, but given what we know now, I want to see it, Jack said immediately. Absolutely not, Reynolds replied firmly. This is an active investigation, and you're a material witness. Stay with your family. I'll update you as soon as we know more. After hanging up, Jack relayed the information to Diane, who looked physically ill at the implications. We need to get Mia further away, she whispered. Maybe my sister's place in Oregon? Jack shook his head. Running won't solve this. If there really is a network involved, they could have resources beyond what we imagine. Our best bet is to stay close to the investigation, help identify everyone involved, and make sure they're all apprehended. Their discussion was interrupted by Ben, who stepped onto the porch with a concerned expression. Jack, Mia's asking about going home. She wants to know when things will be normal again. The simple question from an 8-year-old perspective highlighted the cruel reality they faced. Normal might never return, not in the way Mia remembered it. Tell her we're having a special vacation for a while, Jack suggested after a moment's thought. That we'll be staying in a new house for a bit because ours needs some repairs. Ben nodded and returned inside, leaving Jack and Diane to confront the uncertainty of their future. What happens when this is over? Diane asked quietly. With us? With custody arrangements? It was the question that had hovered between them since the separation, now complicated by recent events. I don't know, Jack admitted. A week ago, I would have said we proceed with the divorce, establish a custody schedule, move on separately. But now there's a threat to Mia that changes everything," Diane finished for him. Jack nodded, then added something he hadn't planned to say. "And you've changed too." The Diane from 3 weeks ago wouldn't have accepted Warren's true nature so completely. Wouldn't have been so focused on Mia's safety above everything else. It wasn't forgiveness, exactly, but it was an acknowledgement of growth, of Diane's eyes finally being open to the danger she had unwittingly invited into their lives. "I'll never make that mistake again," Diane said with quiet intensity. "I'll never trust anyone around Mia without absolute certainty they mean her no harm." It was the kind of protective instinct Jack had been waiting to see from her, late in coming, but perhaps not too late for their daughter's well-being. Later that evening, as Mia slept in the cabin's small second bedroom, Jack received another call from Reynolds. "We raided the cabin," the detective reported, his voice grim. "Found evidence consistent with child trafficking preparations, restraints sized for children, sedatives, fake identification documents. But no people. Place was deserted. They were tipped off," Jack included. "Appears that way. But we did find something else, a laptop hidden in a ventilation duct. Cyber team is working on it now. But preliminary findings suggest communication with at least 3 other individuals regarding plans for that location." The implications were clear. Warren wasn't working alone, and his associates were still out there. "We're moving the family to a secure location tomorrow," Jack informed Reynolds. Ben's arranged it through unofficial channels. Reynolds didn't bother arguing against this breach of protocol. "Keep me updated on your location. And Jack, watch your back. If these people are as organized as they appear to be, they won't appreciate you disrupting their operation." After ending the call, Jack stepped outside for fresh air, trying to process the escalating situation. What had begun as a betrayal by his wife had evolved into something far more sinister. A glimpse into a dark network that trafficked in the exploitation of children. And, somehow, his family had become entangled in it. Ben joined him a few minutes later, handing him a mug of coffee laced with bourbon. "Reynolds called me too," Ben said. "Filled me in on the cabin." Jack took a long swallow of the spiked coffee. "This is bigger than we thought." "Always was," Ben replied. "Men like Warren don't operate in isolation. They find each other, protect each other. And now they know we've identified one of them," Jack said. "Which means Mia isn't just a target of opportunity anymore. She's a liability. A witness who could identify Warren." Ben's expression was grave. "You really think they'd come after an 8-year-old to silence her?" "People who traffic children are capable of anything," Jack said flatly. "And Warren knows Mia could identify him, could testify about his behavior around her." The implications hung heavily in the night air. Their enemy wasn't just Warren Blake anymore. It was an unknown number of individuals with similar intentions, potentially with resources and connections they couldn't yet identify. "The rental property is secure," Ben assured him. "Former military owns it, off the grid, no digital footprint. We'll move you tomorrow, set up communication protocols." Jack nodded gratefully. "I need to make one stop first." "Alone?" Ben raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like something I should talk you out of." "Probably," Jack agreed. "But you won't." The following morning, while Diane packed their meager belongings and Ben prepared Mia for the move with a game pretending they were spies on a secret mission, Jack drove to the hospital where Warren remained under guard. Using his military ID and a connection with the hospital's head of security, a former Marine, Jack gained access to Warren's room. The man lay handcuffed to the bed, tubes and monitors connecting him to various machines. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. "Mason," Warren croaked when he saw Jack, fear briefly flashing across his features before being replaced with defiance. "Come to finish the job?" "I came for information," Jack said, closing the door behind him. "About your associates. The ones who are going to meet you at the cabin." Warren's lips twisted in a weak approximation of his former smirk. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "They abandoned you, Warren," Jack said, moving closer to the bed. "Left you to take the fall while they disappeared. Police found the cabin, the preparations. It's over." Uncertainty flickered in Warren's eyes. "I want a lawyer present for any discussion." "This isn't an official interview," Jack said quietly. "This is between you and me." One chance to do something right, to give me the information I need to protect my daughter from your friends. You can't touch me, Warren sneered, though his confidence appeared to be wavering. I'm in police custody. Anything happens to me, you're the obvious suspect. Jack smiled thinly. I'm not going to hurt you, Warren. I don't need to. He leaned closer. But I've spent 20 years in special forces. I've made contacts around the world, including in every major prison in this state. One phone call, and your life inside becomes difficult. Fear crawled across Warren's face as the implications sank in. You're bluffing. Maybe, Jack conceded. But ask yourself this. How much are these associates worth to you? The ones who left you bleeding and arrested while they disappeared. The ones who haven't sent a lawyer, haven't tried to contact you, haven't done anything to help. Warren's expression wavered, doubt replacing defiance. Jack pressed his advantage. They used you, Warren. You were the expendable one, the distraction. Give me names, give me locations, and I'll make sure Detective Reynolds knows you cooperated. It could mean the difference between regular population and protective custody. For a long moment, Warren seemed to be calculating his options. Finally, his shoulders slumped in defeat. There's a man, calls himself Anderson. I only met him in person once, but he's the one who approached me initially after seeing some content I'd shared online. He's connected, powerful, said he had clients with specific interests willing to pay premium prices. Jack kept his expression neutral despite the revulsion rising within him. Connected how? Politically, I think. He implied protection from high places. That's why I wasn't worried about the charges sticking. He promised intervention if I ever got into trouble. Warren laughed bitterly. Guess that was a lie. Where do I find him? Jack pressed. Warren hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. There's a private club downtown, the Cardinal's Nest. Members only, very exclusive. He conducts business from there. But you'll never get in without. I'll manage, Jack interrupted. What does he look like? Warren described a man in his 50s, distinguished, with silver hair and a scar along his jaw from a childhood accident. As Jack committed the details to memory, he realized he was getting a glimpse into a world few ever saw, a shadow network operating behind legitimate businesses and social connections. They'll kill you if you go after them, Warren warned, a strange mix of fear and satisfaction in his voice. They're not like me. They're organized, connected. They have people everywhere. So do I, Jack replied simply. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. One more thing. Was Mia specifically targeted, or was she just convenient because of your relationship with Diane? Pain flickered across Warren's face. Not physical, but something deeper. It started as convenience. But then Anderson saw her photo on my phone. He said she was premium merchandise, blonde, athletic, the right age. That's when it became more than just my personal interest. The confession, stark in its horror, confirmed Jack's worst fears. This hadn't been random. At some point, Mia had been specifically identified as a target by people beyond Warren. If you're lying to me, Jack said quietly, about any of this, I'll know. And I'll be back. Warren didn't respond, turning his face away as Jack left the room. Outside the hospital, Jack sat in his car for several minutes, processing what he'd learned. The threat was real, organized, and potentially far-reaching. Warren had been merely the visible edge of something much darker. He called Ben to relay the information, instructing him to reach out to trusted contacts for intelligence on the Cardinal's Nest and anyone matching Anderson's description. Then he called Reynolds, sharing everything except the implied threat he'd made to Warren. The detective sounded troubled by the new information. This goes beyond my jurisdiction if what he's saying is true, Reynolds admitted. I'll need to bring in federal resources, possibly FBI's Crimes Against Children unit. Do it, Jack agreed. But keep my family's location restricted to only those you absolutely trust. If this Anderson has connections like Warren claims, information could leak. After ending the call, Jack sat for a moment longer, steeling himself for what came next. The battle to protect Mia had expanded beyond a single predator to an organized network, one that had already identified his daughter as a target. As he started the car to return to the cabin, Jack felt a cold certainty settle over him. This wouldn't end with investigations and arrests. Some threats required more permanent solutions, and he was uniquely qualified to provide them. Act 3. Reckoning. Chapter 7. The Cardinal's Nest. The safe house Ben had arranged was a modernized farmhouse on 20 acres of land outside the city. Isolated without being conspicuous, it offered clear sight lines in all directions and multiple evacuation routes, perfect for a family needing both security and privacy. For Mia, the property was an adventure, a pond for swimming, woods for exploring, even a small stable with 2 gentle horses owned by the property's caretaker. The illusion of a vacation helped distract her from the reality of their situation, though she sometimes asked pointed questions that revealed her awareness that something was wrong. "Are the bad men still looking for us?" she asked Jack one evening as he tucked her into bed in the farmhouse's cozy second bedroom. Jack paused, considering how much truth an 8-year-old could handle. "Some of them might be," he finally answered, "but they don't know where we are, and we have lots of people helping keep us safe." Mia nodded solemnly. Like Uncle Ben and his friends with the big guns. Jack suppressed a smile. Ben's security team, former operators from various military branches, maintained a discreet but constant presence on the property. They kept their weapons concealed when Mia was around, but clearly not well enough. "Exactly like them," Jack agreed. "Now sleep tight, sunshine. Big day tomorrow." Tomorrow would indeed be significant, but not for the horseback riding lesson Mia anticipated. After nearly 2 weeks of reconnaissance and preparation, Jack and Ben had finally gathered enough intelligence on the Cardinals' nest to make their move. Downstairs, Diane sat with Ben and Jack's newest ally, Special Agent Leah Winters from the FBI's Crimes Against Children Unit. Reynolds had brought her in after reviewing the evidence from Warren's devices in the cabin, recognizing the case had expanded beyond local jurisdiction. "The club operates as a legitimate business on paper," Agent Winters explained, spreading photographs across the kitchen table. "Private membership, expensive fees, exclusive clientele. The owner is listed as Cardinal Enterprises, but it's a shell corporation registered in the Caymans." "And this Anderson?" Diane asked, studying the surveillance photos Ben's team had obtained. "Still working to confirm his identity," Winters admitted. "He uses various aliases, moves between circles that don't typically intersect. What we do know is that he's connected to at least 3 other cases involving trafficking and exploitation." Jack examined the photos thoughtfully. The man matched Warren's description, distinguished, silver-haired, with a distinctive scar along his jawline. In each image, he was impeccably dressed, projecting wealth and confidence as he entered or exited the club. "What's the play here?" Ben asked. "Official raid? Undercover operation?" Winters grimaced. "That's the problem. We don't have enough for a warrant yet. These types of operations are notoriously difficult to penetrate. They use rotating locations, encrypted communications, vetted members only. The club is just the visible front. So we create our own way in," Jack said, his mind already formulating a plan. "Whatever you're thinking, stop," Winters warned. "This is a federal investigation now. Civilian interference could jeopardize our chances of taking down the entire network." Jack met her gaze evenly. "With all due respect, Agent Winters, these people have specifically targeted my daughter. While you build your case, they remain active and dangerous. I'm not willing to sit back and hope your investigation moves faster than their operations." Tension filled the room as the professional and personal objectives clashed. Ben, ever the mediator, stepped in. "What if we work together?" he suggested. "Jack has resources and skills that could supplement your investigation, Agent Winters. Off the books, of course." Winters looked skeptical. "What kind of resources?" "I have contacts at the Cardinal's Nest," Jack revealed. "A former teammate works security there. Private contractor, not aware of what might be happening behind the scenes. He can get me in, make introductions." This was news to everyone in the room, including Ben. Jack had been conducting his own parallel investigation, reaching out to old networks while the FBI followed official channels. "That's extremely dangerous," Winters objected. "If Anderson or his associates identify you as Mia's father." "They won't," Jack assured her. "I'll be using a cover identity my friend has already established, an out-of-town investor looking for exclusive opportunities. Anderson doesn't know what I look like. Diane, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke up. I don't like this. You're putting yourself directly in their path. Better me than them finding us here, Jack pointed out gently. Every day they operate freely is another day Mia remains at risk. The discussion continued late into the night, with Winters reluctantly agreeing to coordinate with Jack's infiltration attempt while maintaining plausible deniability for the Bureau. The plan was simple in concept, complex in execution. Jack would enter the Cardinals' nest, identify Anderson and his key associates, gather enough intelligence to justify a federal raid, then extract safely. The following evening, as Ben's team maintained security at the farmhouse and Diane kept Mia occupied with board games, Jack prepared for his infiltration. Gone was the practical, military-influenced wardrobe, replaced by an expensive tailored suit. His normally short hair had been styled differently, and subtle cosmetic adjustments, courtesy of Ben's contact and theater production, altered his appearance just enough to prevent recognition from photographs. "How do I look?" Jack asked Ben as he made final adjustments to his appearance. "Like a rich asshole I'd love to punch," Ben replied with a grim smile. "Perfect for the venue." Jack checked the specialized equipment disguised as ordinary objects, a fountain pen with recording capabilities, cufflinks that functioned as transmitters, a watch that could capture images. All provided by Winters through unofficial channels, all offering plausible deniability if discovered. "If you don't check in every 30 minutes, we move to extraction," Ben reminded him. "Winters has a team on standby 3 blocks from the club. I'll be in the surveillance van with her team, monitoring communications." Jack nodded, committing the protocols to memory. As he prepared to leave, Diane appeared in the doorway. "Be careful," she said simply. "Mia needs you to come home." Jack was struck by how much had changed between them in the weeks since Warren's attack. The anger and betrayal remained, but had been tempered by shared purpose and danger. They functioned now as allies if not partners, united in their determination to protect their daughter. "I will," he promised. "This ends tonight." The Cardinals' nest occupied the top 2 floors of a renovated historic building downtown. The exterior projected old-world elegance. No signage, just a discreet cardinal emblem embossed on the brass door. A suited doorman checked credentials before allowing entry, and private elevators whisked approved guests to the club above. Jack's contact, Miguel Ortiz, met him at a coffee shop around the corner to provide final details before his entrance. "I've added you to the guest list as Stephen Hayes," Miguel explained, sliding a membership card across the table. "You're a private equity manager from Chicago, in town exploring investment opportunities. Anderson usually arrives around 10 and holds court in the back room until the early hours." "Security measures?" Jack asked, pocketing the card. "Metal detectors at the elevator. Concierge desk does bag checks. The real protection is the membership vetting. They don't let just anyone in, and guests are thoroughly investigated beforehand." "But not thoroughly enough," Jack noted with grim satisfaction. His cover identity had withstood scrutiny, the background fabricated expertly by one of Ben's contacts in intelligence. Miguel leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Look, I don't know exactly what you're after, but these are serious players. Old money, political connections, the kind of people who make problems disappear. Whatever you find in there, be careful how you use it." Jack nodded, recognizing the risk his friend was taking by helping him. "I appreciate this, Miguel. I owe you. Just make sure whatever you're doing is worth it," Miguel replied, standing to leave. "I'll be on duty at the main bar if you need me, but don't acknowledge me unless absolutely necessary." At precisely 9:30, Jack approached the Cardinals' nest, projecting the confident entitlement of wealth and privilege. The doorman verified his membership card, and the elevator operator, a young woman in a crisp uniform, escorted him to the club level. The space that greeted him exuded refined luxury. Dark wood paneling, leather seating, subtle lighting that flattered the club's well-heeled clientele. A jazz quartet played softly in one corner, while impeccably dressed servers moved discreetly among the members. To all appearances, it was simply an exclusive social club for the elite. Jack moved through the space casually, ordering a single malt at the bar and engaging in light conversation with other members while surveying the layout. Miguel stood behind the bar, supervising the bartenders, acknowledging Jack with only the slightest nod when their eyes briefly met. By 10:15, the club had filled with what appeared to be regular members, predominantly men, though a few elegantly dressed women circulated as well. Jack noted which members were greeted with particular deference by the staff, identifying the establishment's hierarchy. At 10:30, a subtle shift in energy rippled through the club as Anderson entered through a private elevator. Jack recognized him immediately from the surveillance photos. Silver hair immaculately styled, the distinctive scar along his jawline partially visible despite careful grooming to minimize it. He moved with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to power, greeting select members with handshakes and brief conversations as he made his way toward a door at the back of the main room. Following Winter's instructions, Jack activated the recording devices and positioned himself to be noticed without being obvious about it. When Anderson paused at the bar near him, Jack seized the opportunity. "Excellent selection of Macallan," he commented, gesturing to his glass. Chicago clubs rarely stock the 25-year. Anderson turned, assessing Jack with practiced ease. "A visitor to our fair city, then?" "Stephen Hayes." Jack introduced himself, extending a hand. "Here exploring some investment opportunities." "Charles Anderson," the man replied, shaking Jack's hand firmly. "What sort of investments interest you, Mr. Hayes?" "The exclusive kind," Jack answered with the slight smile they had rehearsed, suggestive without being explicit. "I find standard portfolios uninspiring. I prefer unique opportunities with significant returns." Anderson's expression remained pleasant, but his eyes sharpened with interest. "Many of our members share that philosophy. Perhaps you'd care to join some of us for a more private discussion? We occasionally review special opportunities not available to the general market." It was exactly the opening they had anticipated. Jack followed Anderson through the private door into a wood-paneled room where 4 other men sat around a table, drinks and cigars in hand. Jack recognized 2 from Winter's intelligence briefing, a state judge and a tech entrepreneur, both suspected of involvement in Anderson's network. The others were unknown, but their casual display of wealth spoke to significant resources. "Gentlemen, this is Stephen Hayes from Chicago," Anderson introduced him. "He's interested in our more exclusive investment opportunities." The next 2 hours unfolded precisely as Jack and Winters had hoped. Under the guise of vague financial discussions, Anderson and his associates gradually revealed the outlines of their operation. Never explicitly, always couched in euphemisms and business terminology, but clear enough to someone listening for it. "Our premium acquisitions come with significant appreciation potential," Anderson explained at one point. "The initial placement cost is considerable, but the leasing options provide substantial ongoing revenue. The procurement process is necessarily selective," added the judge, whose name Jack had learned was Harrington. "Quality control is paramount in this market." Jack played his role perfectly, interested but cautious, knowledgeable but requiring more concrete details before committing. The conversation danced around specifics until Anderson apparently made a decision. "We're conducting a portfolio review this weekend at my lake property," he mentioned casually. "A small gathering of serious investors. You might find it educational, Mr. Hayes, if your schedule permits." "I'd be honored," Jack replied, understanding the significance of the invitation. According to Winters, these gatherings were where the network's actual transactions occurred, where children were evaluated and essentially auctioned to investors. As the evening progressed, Jack gathered names, connections, and enough recorded conversations to justify the federal warrants Winters needed. When he excused himself to use the restroom, he transmitted the gathered intelligence to the surveillance team waiting nearby. "We've got what we need," Winters confirmed through the discreet earpiece. "Clear the building. Extraction team is ready at the south exit." But as Jack prepared to leave, a complication arose. The tech entrepreneur, Vance, according to earlier introductions, was studying him with increasing suspicion. "Hayes from Chicago," Vance mused. "Funny, I was just there last week meeting with all the major private equity firms. Don't recall your name coming up. Jack maintained his composure. We maintain a deliberately low profile. Family office structure, private clients only. Vance nodded, but his eyes had narrowed. Which building are you in? Michigan Avenue. Before Jack could respond, the door opened and a new arrival entered. Cole Weathers, looking nervous but determined as he scanned the room. His eyes widened upon seeing Jack, recognition immediate despite the cosmetic alterations. That's him, Cole blurted. That's Jack Mason, Mia's father. The room froze for a split second before erupting into controlled chaos. Anderson's pleasant mask dropped, revealing cold calculation beneath. Judge Harrington lunged for the door, presumably to alert security. Vance reached inside his jacket, likely for a weapon. Jack reacted with the speed and precision of his years of training. A swift strike incapacitated Vance before he could draw his weapon. A well-placed kick sent the heavy table crashing into Anderson and another associate. But Cole and the judge had already made it through the door, shouting for security. Compromise. Moving to extraction now. Jack reported tersely through his communication device as he assessed escape options. The private room had only 2 exits, the main door now blocked by emerging security personnel and a fire exit that likely led to the building's rear stairwell. Jack chose the latter, bursting through the door just as the first security guards entered from the main entrance. The stairwell was dimly lit and narrow, spiraling down the back of the historic building. Jack descended rapidly, hearing the door above crash open as pursuers gave chase. 2 floors down, another door opened, and Miguel appeared. This way, his friend directed urgently. Service elevator to the basement, then out through the loading dock. Jack followed without question, trusting his former teammates' knowledge of the building's layout. They descended another flight before Miguel led him through a maintenance area to a freight elevator. Anderson's people are covering all the main exits, Miguel reported as they descended. They've called in additional security, not regular club personnel. These guys are carrying. The implications were clear. Anderson's operation included armed enforcers ready to eliminate threats. The fact that they would risk such exposure in a public venue spoke to the desperation triggered by Jack's infiltration. When the elevator reached the basement, Miguel led Jack through a maze of storage rooms and maintenance areas toward a loading dock at the rear of the building. As they approached the exit, Miguel paused. I'll create a distraction at the side entrance, he said. Draw their attention away from the loading area. Ben's team is waiting in a delivery van in the alley. Jack gripped his friend's shoulder. You're compromised now, too. Come with me. Miguel shook his head. Someone has to sell the story that you escaped another way. Besides, they don't know I helped you. Just go, and whatever this is about, finish it. Before Jack could argue further, Miguel disappeared down a side corridor. Moments later, the sound of breaking glass and shouting came from the direction he'd gone, the promised distraction. Jack moved swiftly to the loading dock, finding the delivery van idling exactly where Miguel had indicated. The side door slid open as he approached, revealing Ben in the driver's seat and 2 of his team in tactical gear in the rear compartment. Move! Ben ordered as Jack jumped inside. The van accelerated down the alley before the door had fully closed, tires squealing as they turned onto a side street and away from the Cardinals' nest. Winters got the transmission, Ben reported as they navigated through back streets, avoiding main thoroughfares where Anderson's people might be watching. Raid teams are mobilizing now for Anderson and the others. Cole Weathers was there, Jack said grimly. He recognized me, blew my cover. Ben cursed under his breath. I thought he was in custody. Released on bail yesterday. One of the tactical team members informed them. Winters tried to block it, but the judge overruled insufficient flight risk. The judge was Harrington, Jack realized. He was in the room tonight, part of Anderson's circle. The pieces were falling into place. The network's protection extended into the judicial system, explaining how Warren had made bail despite the severity of his charges, how Cole had been released to warn Anderson. We need to get back to the farmhouse, Jack said urgently. If Cole identified me, they may know about Diane and Mia, too. Ben was already changing course. accelerating as he contacted the security team at the safe house. After a tense moment, he relaxed slightly. Perimeter is secure, no unusual activity. Diane and Mia are fine, watching a movie in the main room. Jack breathed a sigh of relief, but knew the danger had only escalated. With his cover blown, Anderson and his associates would be desperate to eliminate the threat he represented, not just to their freedom, but to their entire operation. When they arrived at the farmhouse 40 minutes later, Jack found Diane waiting anxiously in the kitchen while one of Ben's team stood guard nearby. "What happened?" she demanded as soon as Jack entered. The security team suddenly doubled the patrols without explanation. Jack quickly explained the compromise at the club and Cole's unexpected appearance. Diane paled as the implications became clear. "They know who you are now. They might know about us, about this place." "Might, but unlikely," Ben interjected. "Cole wouldn't have had time to follow the connection to this location. But we need to move you again, just to be safe." Jack's phone rang. "Agent Winters. We hit Anderson's club and his residence simultaneously," she reported without preamble. "Got the judge and 2 others from the meeting, but Anderson himself wasn't at either location. Vance is in custody, along with significant electronic evidence. Cole Weathers was found unconscious in an alley behind the club. Looks like Anderson's people tried to silence him." "And Miguel?" Jack asked, concerned for his friend. "No sign of him. Club security claims no knowledge of anyone by that name." The news was concerning, but not surprising. Miguel would have gone aground, using his own resources to disappear until the situation stabilized. "What about Anderson's lake property?" Jack pressed. "The gathering this weekend? Teams are preparing to raid it tomorrow," Winters confirmed. "But without Anderson in custody, he might warn others, move the location. We're working to identify the property now. He owns several through shell companies." After ending the call, Jack found Diane watching him with a mixture of fear and determination. "We should leave the country," she suggested. "Take Mia somewhere they can't reach her until this is over." It was a reasonable suggestion, one Jack had considered himself. But experience had taught him that running often only delayed the inevitable confrontation. "These people have resources," he explained gently. "International connections, false identities, private transportation. Even if we left, they could follow. The only way to truly protect Mia is to dismantle their entire operation." Diane didn't appear convinced. "That could take months, years even. Are we supposed to live in safe houses, looking over our shoulders the entire time?" Before Jack could respond, Ben returned from checking the property's perimeter. "We've got vehicles approaching," he reported tersely. 2 SUVs, no headlights, coming up the access road. Not law enforcement patterns. Jack moved immediately to action. "Initiate evacuation protocol. Get Diane and Mia to the fallback location." While Ben coordinated with his team, Jack went to Mia's room, finding her asleep surrounded by stuffed animals. He gently woke her, keeping his voice calm despite the urgency. "Hey, sunshine, we need to go on another adventure," he said, helping her into a jacket. "Remember the special hiding game we practiced?" Mia nodded sleepily, recognizing the code phrase they'd established for emergency situations. "Is Mom coming too?" "Yes, she's getting the special backpacks right now. We need to be very quiet and very fast." "Okay." As Jack carried Mia downstairs, Ben's team had already mobilized, 2 operators escorting Diane to the tunnel entrance concealed in the barn, others taking defensive positions around the property. "Anderson?" Jack asked Ben as they moved swiftly through the house's rear exit. "Most likely," Ben confirmed grimly. 8 to 10 hostiles based on vehicle capacity. Well-equipped from what our perimeter sensors picked up, tactical gear, military-grade weapons. The implications were clear. This wasn't law enforcement or a simple intimidation attempt. Anderson had deployed a heavily armed team to eliminate threats to his operation. "Get them out," Jack ordered, handing Mia to Diane at the barn entrance. "I'll delay them here. Buy you time to reach the extraction point." "Jack, no," Diane protested, clutching Mia with one arm while reaching for him with the other. "Come with us. Someone needs to hold them off long enough for you to get clear," Jack explained, his voice gentle but firm. Ben's team will protect you. I'll join you as soon as I can. The lie was necessary. Jack had no intention of following immediately. His priority was ensuring Anderson's team focused on him rather than pursuing Diane and Mia. Daddy. Mia's voice was small, confused by the tension around her. Jack knelt to look his daughter in the eyes. Be brave for me, sunshine. Go with Mom and Uncle Ben's friends. I'll find you soon, I promise. As Diane and Mia disappeared into the concealed tunnel with two of Ben's operators, Jack turned to his friend. Get to the extraction point, he instructed. If I'm not there in 30 minutes, implement the contingency plan, new identities, new location, completely off-grid. Ben gripped Jack's shoulder. This is a suicide play. They outnumber us, they're well-equipped, and they're coming with intent to kill. I don't plan to die tonight, Jack assured him, checking his weapon. But I do plan to end this. Get my family to safety, then call in every resource Winters has. I'm going to make sure Anderson is occupied enough that he can't escape the net this time. Reluctantly, Ben retreated with his remaining team, leaving Jack and two volunteers who had insisted on staying to delay the approaching threat. They positioned themselves strategically around the property, utilizing the security systems Jack had installed upon arrival. As the SUVs approached the final bend in the access road, Jack activated the first countermeasure, caltrops concealed in the gravel that shredded the vehicle's tires, bringing them to a halt several hundred yards from the house. Through night vision equipment, Jack observed armed men deploying from the disabled vehicles, moving in tactical formation toward the farmhouse. Their equipment and movement patterns confirmed Ben's assessment. These weren't ordinary criminals, but trained operators, likely ex-military or private security. Jack's earpiece crackled with a transmission from Ben. Primary package secure, moving to extraction. Secondary package reports, federal response, 15 minutes out. Relief flooded through Jack. Diane and Mia had reached the escape vehicle and were moving to the secondary safe location. Now he needed to keep Anderson's team occupied until federal reinforcements arrived. The first engagement came at the property's perimeter fence. One of Jack's volunteers triggered motion sensors, alerting them to approaching hostiles. A brief, intense exchange of gunfire followed, with the attackers quickly adjusting their approach to avoid the prepared defensive positions. They're splitting up, reported the second volunteer, a former Army Ranger named Taylor. 3 moving toward the barn, others continuing toward the house. I've got the barn, Jack decided, moving silently through the shadows toward the structure. If the attackers discovered the tunnel, they might determine the escape route. He reached the barn just as 3 figures in tactical gear breached the side entrance. Using the darkness to his advantage, Jack eliminated the first attacker with a precise shot, then engaged the remaining 2 in close-quarter combat as they returned fire. The exchange was brief but violent. Jack sustained a graze wound to his arm, but neutralized both attackers through superior training and familiarity with the environment. As he secured their weapons, he noted military-grade communications equipment and identification that confirmed his suspicions. Private contractors, likely former special operations themselves. Before he could report this finding to Taylor, a new voice came over the attacker's radio. Cool, controlled, undeniably Anderson. Team 2, status report. Have you secured the barn exit? Jack made a split-second decision. Keying the radio, he mimicked the flat, professional tone of the contractors. Barn secure. No sign of targets. Proceeding to house. There was a brief pause before Anderson replied. Understood. Be advised, primary targets are female and child. Mason is secondary priority. Capture if possible. Eliminate if necessary. The cold calculation in Anderson's voice as he ordered the capture of an 8-year-old child eliminated any remaining doubt about the man's nature. This wasn't just about silencing witnesses anymore. Anderson still intended to proceed with his original plan for Mia. Jack moved toward the house, where Taylor was engaged with the remaining attackers. Using the confusion of the firefight as cover, he circled behind the main assault team, identifying the command vehicle positioned just beyond the property line. Through thermal imaging, he could make out 2 figures inside. One clearly Anderson based on the physical profile, the other likely a driver or additional security. Both remained safely behind the front line, directing the assault without exposing themselves to danger. Jack's tactical training presented multiple options, but his decision was guided by a singular goal: ensuring Anderson could not escape again. Federal forces would arrive soon, but if Anderson slipped away in the confusion, Mia would never truly be safe. Moving with practiced stealth, Jack approached the command vehicle from the blind spot created by the surrounding trees. The driver was alert but focused on the action at the house, scanning but missing Jack's approach from the unexpected angle. When Jack reached the vehicle, he employed techniques honed through years of special operations: silent entry, immediate control. The driver had only a moment to register surprise before Jack subdued him with precise efficiency. Anderson, focused on communications with his assault team, didn't realize the threat until Jack was already inside the vehicle, weapon trained on him with unwavering precision. "This ends now," Jack said quietly, the cold fury in his voice more effective than any shout. Anderson's composure cracked only briefly before his practiced mask of control returned. "Mason, I should have anticipated your direct approach. Call them off," Jack ordered, gesturing to the radio. "Tell your team to stand down and surrender to authorities." A thin smile crossed Anderson's face. "Or what? You'll kill me?" "That would be convenient for some very powerful people who would prefer I don't have the opportunity to name names. I'm not interested in your deals or your powerful friends," Jack replied evenly. "My only concern is ensuring you never threaten my daughter again." Anderson's eyes narrowed calculatingly. "A noble sentiment. But you should know this goes far beyond me. The organization I represent has international reach, resources beyond what you can imagine. Even if I'm removed from the equation, others will step forward. Then I'll deal with them too," Jack said simply. Before Anderson could respond, the radio crackled with urgent reports: federal vehicles approaching, team members down, requests for extraction. The operation was collapsing around him, his carefully constructed network suddenly vulnerable. "You've no idea what you've done," Anderson said, his composed facade finally cracking to reveal the rage beneath. "The people I protect, the interests I serve, they don't forgive intervention." "Neither do I," Jack replied, unmoved by the threat. In the distance, sirens wailed as federal response teams finally arrived. Through the vehicle's windows, Jack could see the flashing lights of multiple vehicles converging on the property. Anderson's expression shifted subtly, calculation replacing anger as he assessed his dwindling options. "Perhaps we can reach an arrangement," he suggested, his tone modulating to one of reasonable negotiation. "My organization has resources that could benefit your family. Complete security, financial provision, a new identity beyond reach of any threat." The offer was as transparent as it was desperate, a final attempt to escape the consequences now bearing down on him. "The only arrangement I'm interested in," Jack said coldly, "is the one where you spend the rest of your life in a cell, unable to harm another child. And if that's not possible, I'll settle for ensuring you're no longer a threat by any means necessary." As federal agents surrounded the vehicle, Jack maintained his position, weapon trained on Anderson, until properly identified authorities took control of the situation. Only when Anderson was securely in federal custody did Jack finally lower his weapon, the adrenaline of combat giving way to bone-deep exhaustion. Agent Winters found him sitting on the bumper of an ambulance as paramedics treated his arm wound. "Anderson secure," she reported, satisfaction evident beneath her professional demeanor. "Based on intelligence from tonight's raid and what we found at his residence, we've already identified 3 more key members of the network. International partners are moving on offshore operations as we speak." "And Mia? Diane?" Jack asked, his priorities unchanged despite the victory. "Safe at the secondary location with Ben's team," Winters confirmed. "We'll need to keep them in protective custody until the operation concludes, but the immediate threat has been neutralized." As dawn broke over the farmhouse, now a bustling crime scene with federal agents processing evidence and securing prisoners, Jack allowed himself a moment of cautious hope. For the first time since discovering Warren Blake's true nature, he could see a path forward, not just to safety, but to justice. Anderson and his network were facing the full weight of federal prosecution, with evidence mounting by the hour. Warren Blake remained in custody, his cooperation now secure by the collapse of the protection he had counted on. The threat that had hung over Jack's family for weeks was finally being dismantled, piece by piece. But as Jack prepared to join Diane and Mia at the safe location, he knew their journey was far from over. The legal proceedings would take months, possibly years. The trauma Mia had experienced would require ongoing support and healing. And his relationship with Diane remained complicated by both past betrayals and recent solidarity. Still, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Jack allowed himself to believe that his family might eventually find not just safety, but peace. Chapter 8. Reconstruction. 1 month after Anderson's arrest, the Mason family remained under protective custody in a comfortable but secure FBI safe house outside Portland. The sprawling ranch-style home offered space and privacy while maintaining the security protocols necessary to protect key witnesses in a high-profile federal case. For Mia, the transition had been difficult but manageable. Her enrollment in a nearby school under an assumed name provided much-needed routine, while twice-weekly therapy sessions helped her process the ongoing disruption to her life. Though she occasionally asked when they could go home, she had adapted to their temporary circumstances with remarkable resilience. Diane had undergone perhaps the most profound transformation. The events of the past months had stripped away her former complacency, replacing it with vigilant awareness and a fierce protectiveness toward Mia. She had become an active participant in security briefings, learning threat assessment and emergency protocols with dedicated focus. Jack observed these changes with cautious optimism. The woman who had once been blind to Warren's predatory nature now instinctively registered potential dangers in their environment. The wife who had drifted away during his deployments now engaged him in meaningful conversations about their future, separate or together. On a crisp autumn morning, Jack sat on the safe house's covered porch, reviewing updates from Agent Winters. The case against Anderson and his network continued to expand, with investigations now spanning multiple countries. Warren Blake had turned state's evidence, providing detailed testimony about the organization's operations in exchange for consideration during sentencing. Diane joined him, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. "Good news?" she asked, noting his focused expression. "Progress," Jack replied, accepting the offered mug. They've identified 3 more high-level members of Anderson's network, including a federal prosecutor who was helping bury cases. Diane settled into the adjacent chair, pulling her sweater tighter against the morning chill. Will it ever really be over? Will Mia ever be completely safe? It was the question that haunted them both, whether dismantling Anderson's immediate circle would truly eliminate the threat, or whether the network's reach extended beyond what they had yet uncovered. No operation survives having its leadership and infrastructure exposed, Jack said after a thoughtful pause. These organizations thrive on secrecy and protection from powerful figures. With those elements compromised, they collapse. But new ones form, Diane pointed out softly. Jack couldn't deny this reality. Yes, but without specific interest in Mia. She would no longer be a specific target, just a child we need to protect like any parents would. Diane nodded, absorbing this distinction. After a moment of silence, she asked the question that had hovered between them for weeks. "What about us, Jack? Where do we go from here?" Jack took a slow sip of his coffee, considering. The betrayal still ached when he allowed himself to dwell on it, but the intensity had faded as they'd faced greater threats together. "I don't know," he admitted honestly. "A part of me wants to forgive everything and start fresh for Mia's sake. Another part can't forget finding Warren in our home that night, knowing you gave him a key. I wouldn't forgive me either," Diane said quietly. "What I did was unforgivable, not just the affair, but bringing danger into our daughter's life." She looked out at the distant mountains. "But I want you to know I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to Mia, and to you if you'll let me." Before Jack could respond, his phone buzzed with a message from Agent Winters. "Need to speak with you both immediately." Arriving in 20. When Winters arrived, Her typically composed expression was tense with new urgency. She joined them in the safe house's secured office, activating additional privacy protocols before speaking. "We have a situation," she began without preamble. Warren Blake was being transferred to a different facility this morning when the transport was attacked. 3 marshals dead, Blake extracted by unknown assailants. Jack felt Diane stiffen beside him. "Anderson's people?" "Unlikely," Winters replied. "Anderson's remaining associates are scattered, most in custody or hiding." This was too organized, too precise. She paused. "There's more." Before the attack, Blake made a phone call to his attorney that we've now determined was actually redirected to an unidentified third party. The transcript includes specific references to Mia and this safe house. The implication landed like a physical blow. "He knows where we are," Jack concluded. Winters nodded grimly. "We're implementing immediate relocation protocols. A team is already preparing transport, and we've doubled the perimeter security until you're airborne." As Winters coordinated with her team, Jack pulled Diane aside. "This doesn't make sense," he said quietly. "If Anderson's network is compromised, who would risk extracting Warren? Who else would have interest in him? Or us?" Diane's face had gone pale with fear, but her mind worked through the problem with newfound clarity. What if this isn't about the trafficking network at all? What if it's something else Warren was involved in? Something we haven't uncovered yet? The possibility hung between them as they hurried to pack essentials. Mia was collected early from school, confused and frightened by the sudden urgency, but cooperative as they explained another special trip was necessary. Hours later, they were airborne in an unmarked FBI helicopter, destination classified even to them for security purposes. Jack watched the landscape blur beneath them, his mind racing through scenarios and contingencies. Warren Blake was free, armed with knowledge of their location and identities. The threat had evolved yet again, becoming more personal and unpredictable. Beside him, Diane clutched Mia to her side, the girl finally sleeping after the stress of their hasty departure. In the dim light of the helicopter cabin, Diane's expression reflected the same determined protectiveness Jack felt, a shared purpose that transcended their fractured relationship. "We'll get through this," he said, just loudly enough to be heard over the helicopter's engines. Diane nodded, reaching out to briefly squeeze his hand. Together, it wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation, not yet. But it was a commitment to the priority they both held above all else, keeping Mia safe whatever that required. What neither of them realized was that Warren's escape had set in motion events that would force them to confront not just external threats, but the foundation of their relationship itself, and ultimately determine whether their family could be salvaged from the wreckage of betrayal and danger. Chapter 9. Final Reckonings. The new safe house, a modernized bunker built into a mountainside in rural Wyoming, offered security at the cost of comfort. Designed for maximum protection rather than extended habitation, its concrete walls and limited windows created an atmosphere of confinement that wore on all of them as days stretched into weeks. Mia struggled most visibly with the restrictions. Without school or external activities, she became withdrawn and irritable, her normally sunny personality dimmed by the ongoing disruption to her life. The dedicated FBI child psychologist who visited twice weekly reported concerning levels of anxiety and signs of depression. "She needs stability," the psychologist, Dr. Porter, told Jack and Diane during one consultation. "Children are resilient, but there are limits to what they can process. Being constantly uprooted, constantly in danger, it creates lasting trauma." "What choice do we have?" Diane asked, frustration edging her voice. "Warren's still out there, potentially with new allies we know nothing about." "I understand the security concerns," Dr. Porter replied gently. "I'm simply telling you the psychological cost to Mia. Decisions about how to balance those considerations are yours as parents." The conversation weighed heavily on Jack as he conducted his daily security check of the facility's perimeter. 3 FBI agents maintained constant guard, but Jack's military experience made him value personal verification over relayed assurances. As he completed his inspection, Agent Winters arrived for their weekly briefing, bringing updates on the investigation into Warren's escape and current threat assessments. Facial recognition picked him up at a bus station in Oklahoma 2 days ago, she reported, displaying the grainy security footage on her tablet. By the time local agents responded, he was gone. But we found this in a locker rented under one of his known aliases. She produced photographs of handwritten notes, locations, dates, names. Jack recognized some as places they had stayed during their relocation process, others as members of Ben's security team. He's been tracking us, Jack concluded, building a comprehensive intelligence file. Yes, but there's more, Winters said, her expression grave. The names include people connected to neither your family nor Anderson's network. We've identified several as private military contractors with specific expertise in extraction operations. He's building a team, Jack realized. But why? The trafficking network is exposed. Even if he somehow managed to reach Mia, every law enforcement agency in the country would be hunting him. We think his motivation has shifted from his original interest in Mia to revenge against you, Winters explained. The notes include detailed information about your military background, your known associates, even psychological assessments of your likely responses to various scenarios. The revelation was disturbing, but not entirely surprising. Jack had humiliated Warren, thwarted his plans, and ultimately been instrumental in dismantling the network that had protected him. Revenge was a powerful motivator, especially for someone with Warren's psychological profile. What about the people who broke him out? Diane asked. Who are they? Winters hesitated before answering. That's where things get complicated. The operation was too sophisticated for someone with Warren's limited resources to have arranged, especially from custody. We believe he had help from someone with significant capabilities. Anderson's organization had deep pockets, Jack suggested. That was our initial theory, Winters acknowledged. But recent intelligence suggests another possibility. She paused, choosing her words carefully. We've uncovered communication between Warren and Cole Weathers dating back years before Warren met Diane. Communication that references financial transactions and shared business interests outside of real estate. Jack processed this information, connecting it to his earlier suspicions. They weren't just acquaintances who reconnected through a mutual grudge against me. They were partners all along. Appears that way, Winters confirmed. And based on what we found, their partnership extended beyond just the two of them. We're looking at what appears to be a separate organization, smaller than Anderson's network, but potentially more dangerous because of its focus on vengeance rather than profit. The implications were disturbing. Warren wasn't just a predator who had targeted Mia through opportunity. He was part of a coordinated operation that had deliberately infiltrated their lives, using Diane as an unwitting pawn. After Winters departed, Jack shared the new information with Diane, watching her face as understanding dawned. He planned it from the beginning, she whispered, horror evident in her voice. Meeting me at the real estate office, pursuing a relationship. It was all deliberate. It seems that way, Jack confirmed gently. Though we still don't know the full extent of their original plan or how it connected to Anderson's operation. Diane pressed her hands to her face. I was such a fool, so completely blind. Jack watched her struggle with this new layer of betrayal. Despite everything that had happened between them, he couldn't help feeling sympathy for her position. Warren had manipulated her expertly, exploiting vulnerabilities in their marriage that Jack himself had helped create through his absences. We both missed signs we should have seen, he acknowledged. But that's in the past. What matters now is how we protect Mia from what's coming. Later that night, after Mia had finally fallen asleep, Jack found Diane sitting alone in the bunker's small kitchen area, a cup of tea cooling untouched before her. I keep thinking about the first time I met him, she said without looking up. How carefully he orchestrated it to seem like chance. How he mentioned having just moved back to the area after working in Phoenix, one of the cities where he'd had restraining orders filed. Jack sat across from her, the narrow table in intimate distance in the bunker's confined space. Predators like Warren study their targets. They learn what you respond to, what you need, then become exactly that. But why me? Why our family specifically? Diane asked, finally meeting his eyes. Was it random, Or was there something more deliberate to it? It was a question Jack had been pondering himself since Winter's revelations. The coincidences seemed too numerous for random chance. Warren's appearance in their lives shortly after one of Jack's longest deployments, Cole Weather's previous business interaction with Jack years earlier, the connection to Anderson's network. I don't know, he admitted, but I intend to find out. The following morning, Jack contacted Ben with a request that circumvented official channels. Access to Warren's complete background, beyond what the FBI had shared. Ben's network of former military intelligence specialists could access information through backdoor methods that federal investigators were legally constrained from pursuing. 3 days later, Ben arrived personally at the bunker, bringing not just information, but a theory that connected disparate elements into a disturbing pattern. Warren Blake wasn't born Warren Blake, Ben explained as they reviewed the files he'd brought. His original name was Warren Kessler, son of Victor Kessler. The name triggered immediate recognition for Jack. The arms dealer? The one we intercepted in Croatia? Ben nodded grimly. The very same. Operation Blackfish, 2016. You led the team that captured Victor Kessler after a 3-year intelligence operation. He died in federal custody a year later. Diane looked between them, confusion evident. What does this have to do with us? Victor Kessler had a son who swore revenge on the team responsible for his father's capture, Ben explained. He disappeared afterward, presumed to have returned to Europe. But apparently, he resurfaced years later with a new identity. As Warren Blake, Jack concluded the pieces finally fitting together. He engineered the entire situation, meeting Diane, starting a relationship, gaining access to our home, all as part of a long-term revenge plan. From what we've gathered, yes, Ben confirmed. His connection to Anderson's network appears to have been opportunistic, a means to an end rather than his primary objective. When he realized Mia's potential value to Anderson, he saw an opportunity to both satisfy his own proclivities and hurt you in the process. Diane made a small, pained sound. I was just a tool to him, a way to get to Jack and Mia. The revelation brought clarity but little comfort. Warren's motivation now made terrible sense. A calculated vengeance years in the planning, using Jack's family as the instruments of his retribution. Does Winters know about this connection? Jack asked. Ben shook his head. Not yet. The link between Warren Blake and Warren Kessler is buried deep. We only found it through methods that wouldn't stand up to legal scrutiny. Then we have information Warren doesn't know we possess, Jack noted, his tactical mind already processing the advantage. We know why he's coming, and we know it won't end until either he's stopped permanently or he accomplishes his revenge. The implication hung in the air between them. Official channels, with their legal constraints and procedural requirements, might not be sufficient against an enemy with Warren's resources and determination. Protecting Mia might require measures beyond what the FBI could officially sanction. What are you thinking? Diane asked, recognizing the shift in Jack's demeanor. That we can't keep running forever, Jack replied simply. That Mia deserves a normal life without living in fear. That sometimes the only way to end a threat is to confront it directly. Ben studied his friend with knowing eyes. You're talking about drawing him out, using yourself as bait. I'm talking about finishing what he started, Jack corrected. On our terms, not his. The plan that emerged over the following days was ruthlessly simple in concept, complex in execution. Rather than continuing to hide, Jack would create the appearance of a family fracture, ostensibly leaving protective custody after a disagreement with Diane about their future. This visible separation would present Warren with the opportunity he sought, a chance to strike at Jack when he appeared vulnerable and isolated. Agent Winters opposed the plan vehemently when Jack finally shared a modified version with her, omitting the connection to Warren's true identity and presenting it as a necessary measure to resolve the ongoing threat. It's reckless and unnecessary, she argued. We're making progress, tracking his movements. Eventually, he'll make a mistake, and we'll apprehend him through proper channels. Eventually isn't good enough, Jack countered. My daughter is living in a concrete bunker, showing signs of psychological trauma. Diane and I are effectively prisoners despite having committed no crime. How long do you expect us to live this way? Winters had no satisfactory answer. The reality of witness protection was harsh. Some families remained in the program for years, even decades, their former lives permanently abandoned. Give me a better option, Jack challenged. One that ends this definitively and allows Mia to grow up without constantly looking over her shoulder. In the end, Winters reluctantly agreed to provide limited support for Jack's plan, while maintaining official deniability. The FBI would monitor but not intervene unless absolutely necessary, allowing Jack and Ben's team the operational flexibility they needed. The first phase began with a carefully staged argument between Jack and Diane, conducted where Mia couldn't overhear, but FBI personnel monitoring the safe house could. The dispute, ostensibly about whether to accept permanent relocation under new identities, escalated until Jack stormed out, announcing his intention to handle Warren myself, rather than continue living in fear. Diane played her role perfectly, the genuine emotion behind her performance, making it entirely convincing. Only after the FBI agents reported Jack's departure did she break down, confessing to Winters that she feared Jack's reckless plan would get him killed. Information about Jack's departure was deliberately leaked through channels Warren was known to be monitoring. A trail of digital breadcrumbs led away from Wyoming toward Colorado, where Jack established residence in a remote cabin outside Durango that offered both isolation and tactical advantages. For 3 weeks, Jack maintained the appearance of a man, making minimal security preparations while primarily drowning his sorrows in isolation. He visited local establishments, made cursory efforts at surveillance that would be easily detected, and generally presented the image of a man whose military discipline had been compromised by emotional distress. When the first signs of surveillance appeared, unusual vehicles on the rural road, subtle disturbances to the security measures he'd visibly implemented, Jack recognized Warren's reconnaissance phase beginning. Rather than responding defensively, he maintained his vulnerable facade, even appearing intoxicated during trips into town to reinforce the impression of his compromised state. Behind this carefully constructed image, however, Jack's preparations were methodical and comprehensive. The cabin and surrounding area had been prepared with concealed surveillance, weapons caches, and escape routes known only to him and Ben's team, who maintained covert positions nearby. On the night Warren finally made his move, Jack was ready. The attack came just after midnight, a coordinated approach by 6 individuals using professional tactical methods. They disabled the visible security systems Jack had installed, established perimeter positions, and prepared for a simultaneous breach of all entrances. What they didn't know was that Jack had been awake and fully alert, monitoring their approach through hidden systems that remained undetected. As the assault team prepared to breach, Jack activated the first of several countermeasures. Remote-triggered flashbang devices that disoriented 2 of the perimeter guards, followed by targeted suppressive fire that separated the remaining team members without directly engaging them. The confusion created precious seconds for Jack to implement the next phase, a controlled withdrawal that appeared panicked but was actually drawing the attackers into prepared zones of engagement. As they pursued, believing their target was fleeing in fear, Jack systematically isolated and neutralized them one by one. 3 were incapacitated through non-lethal means, secured for later questioning. 2 others retreated under covering fire from the 6th team member, a figure Jack immediately recognized as Cole Weathers, directing the operation from a position of relative safety. Jack allowed Cole to believe the assault was proceeding according to plan, even appearing to sustain a minor injury as he retreated toward the dense forest behind the cabin. Cole took the bait, ordering his remaining operative to circle around while he pursued Jack directly. In the darkness among the trees, roles reversed. Jack became the hunter, using his superior knowledge of the terrain and his years of special operations training to outmaneuver his pursuers. The remaining operative never saw Jack approach before a precisely applied choke hold rendered him unconscious. Cole, suddenly alone and realizing the situation had turned against him, attempted to retreat to their vehicles. He made it halfway across the clearing behind the cabin before Jack's voice stopped him. "It's over, Cole." Cole spun, weapon raised, firing wildly in the direction of Jack's voice. The shots went wide, embedding harmlessly in surrounding trees as Jack remained motionless in the shadows. "Warren's not coming, is he?" Jack continued conversationally, his voice seemingly emanating from a different location now. "He sent you to do the dirty work while he stayed safely away. Just like at my house that night." "Shut up," Cole shouted, panic evident in his voice as he fired again, emptying his magazine toward the source of Jack's voice. "You're dead, Mason. You hear me? Dead." "Warren Kessler," Jack said simply, the name landing like a physical blow. Cole froze, genuine shock replacing panic. "That's not. How did you—" "I know everything," Jack continued, circling silently to a new position. "About Victor Kessler, about Operation Blackfish, about Warren's real identity and his years planning revenge. I know he used you just like he used Diane, tools to get to me." Cole's composure crumbled entirely. "He promised me a share in everything. His father's accounts, the connections, the future operations. Partners, he said. And yet here you are, risking your life while he watches from a distance," Jack observed. "Some partnership." As Cole frantically reloaded his weapon, Jack closed the distance between them with swift, silent efficiency. Before Cole could chamber around, Jack was upon him, disarming him with a practiced move that left Cole on his knees, arm twisted painfully behind him. "Where is he?" Jack demanded, applying precise pressure. Cole gasped in pain. "I don't know. He contacts me, not the other way around. Some cabin by a lake, that's all I know." "Not good enough," Jack said, increasing the pressure slightly. "I need specifics, Cole. Location, security measures, associates." As Cole wavered between defiance and self-preservation, distant headlights appeared on the rural road leading to the cabin. The FBI response team Winters had positioned nearby, moving in now that the immediate confrontation had ended. "Last chance," Jack warned quietly. "Cooperate with me now, or take your chances with federal charges. They'll connect you to everything. The break-in at my house, Warren's escape, Anderson's network. Decades in maximum security." Cole broke, providing details about Warren's location, a lakeside property in northern Idaho, purchased through layers of shell companies. He described security measures, daily routines, and most crucially, confirmed that Warren had no idea his true identity had been discovered. By the time federal agents secured the scene and took custody of Cole and the other attackers, Jack had disappeared into the surrounding wilderness. His part in the official operation was complete. Cole Weathers and his team captured, their connection to Warren Blake documented, the immediate threat to Jack's family neutralized. But Jack's personal mission was just beginning. 3 days later, as autumn painted the Idaho landscape in brilliant hues of gold and crimson, Jack observed Warren Blake's lakeside property from a concealed position on an overlooking ridge. The property matched Cole's description perfectly. Isolated, well-secured, accessible only by a single private road or via the lake itself. Warren's routine had proven predictable despite his paranoia. Each morning began with a circuit of the property perimeter, weapon holstered at his hip as he inspected security measures. Midday was devoted to communications with remaining associates and monitoring news channels for information about the Colorado operation. Evenings found him on the cabin's deck overlooking the lake, drinking steadily as darkness fell. It was during one such evening that Jack finally approached. Moving silently across the lake in a small watercraft with an electric motor, he reached the property's dock undetected. The typical security measures, motion sensors, cameras, perimeter alarms, had been carefully neutralized over the preceding 2 days through methods that would appear as system malfunctions rather than deliberate sabotage. Warren sat on his deck, tumbler of whiskey in hand, staring across the darkened lake with unfocused eyes. He didn't notice Jack's approach until a slight creak of the deck boards announced his presence. Warren's reaction was instantaneous, reaching for his holstered weapon while simultaneously lunging from his chair. But alcohol and complacency had dulled his reflexes. Before his hand closed around the gun, Jack had closed the distance between them, securing Warren's weapon arm in a mobilizing grip. "Hello, Warren," Jack said quietly. Or should I say, Warren Kessler? The name hit Warren like a physical blow. Shock replaced fear in his eyes, followed quickly by calculation. "Mason, how did you find me?" "Cole sends his regards," Jack replied. He was quite informative once he realized you'd sacrificed him. Warren's expression hardened. "So what now? You turn me into your FBI friends? Another trial, another chance for me to escape? This doesn't end until one of us is dead, Mason. You know that." "I do," Jack agreed simply. For a long moment, they remained frozen in tableau. Warren partially restrained but still dangerous, Jack maintaining control without applying lethal force. The moment stretched between them, filled with the weight of everything that had transpired since Warren first engineered his way into the Mason family's life. "Why Diane?" Jack asked finally. "Why not come directly for me?" A cruel smile twisted Warren's features. "Because killing you would have been too quick, too merciful. I wanted you to suffer first, to have your family destroyed from within, to watch your wife choose another man, to have your daughter's innocence corrupted. I wanted you to lose everything before you lost your life." The cold calculation of it, the years of planning, the deliberate targeting of Diane's vulnerabilities, the predatory interest in Mia, confirmed everything Jack had suspected. This wasn't just revenge. It was calculated psychological torture. And Anderson's network? Was that part of the original plan? Warren shrugged, wincing slightly as the movement strained against Jack's grip. An opportunity that presented itself. "I recognized Anderson from certain online forums, made the connection to his organization. When he expressed interest in Mia's profile, it seemed like perfect symmetry. I would get my revenge, and he would get fresh merchandise for his clients." The casual way Warren referenced trafficking Mia broke something in Jack, a final restraint he'd maintained despite everything. His grip tightened involuntarily, eliciting a gasp of pain from Warren. "You won't kill me," Warren said through gritted teeth. "Not in cold blood. You're too bound by your moral code, your sense of justice." "You're right," Jack acknowledged, easing his grip slightly. "Which is why I've arranged something more appropriate." Warren's confidence faltered. "What are you talking about?" "Your father died in federal custody because other prisoners discovered the nature of his crimes. Not just arms dealing, but supplying weapons used against American forces," Jack explained conversationally. "I wonder how long you'll last once certain information about your interest in children circulates through the prison population." Fear flickered across Warren's face. "You're bluffing. The FBI has me isolated, protected." "The FBI doesn't have you at all," Jack pointed out. "Not yet. And when they do get you, certain details about your case will find their way to the right people. That's a promise." For the first time, genuine terror replaced calculation in Warren's expression. He knew, as Jack did, that certain crimes carry their own punishment within prison walls, justice administered by an unforgiving inmate code. "We could make a deal," Warren suggested desperately. "I have accounts offshore, connections your government would value. Information about operations even Anderson didn't know about." Jack regarded him impassively. "The only deal available to you is this. You provide complete, verifiable information about every associate, operation, victim. You spare no one, including yourself. In exchange, I ensure you serve your time in a facility where your survival is possible, if not comfortable. And if I refuse, then I walk away right now," Jack said simply. "And tomorrow, federal agents find this location, with evidence linking you not just to the attempt on my life, but to Anderson's network and multiple other crimes. What happens to you afterward is beyond my control or concern." Warren's shoulders slumped in defeat. The careful plotting, the years of preparation, the complex scheme of revenge, all had ultimately failed. Jack Mason had not only survived, but had systematically dismantled everything Warren had built, leaving him with nothing but the prospect of imprisonment and exposure. "I underestimated you," Warren admitted finally. "Just like my father did." "Yes," Jack agreed. "You did." By dawn, federal agents had secured the lakeside property and taken Warren into custody. The evidence recovered from his devices provided the final connections needed to dismantle what remained of both his personal revenge operation and Anderson's broader network. Warren himself, facing the inevitability of his situation, provided comprehensive testimony in exchange for the protection Jack had promised. Protection that would keep him alive in prison, if not comfortable. 2 months later, as winter settled over the mountain landscape, the Mason family gathered in a new home. A comfortable cabin in Montana purchased through a trust to maintain privacy while allowing them to begin rebuilding their lives. The property offered security without isolation, allowing Mia to attend a nearby school while maintaining necessary precautions. On a snowy December evening, as Mia played with her new puppy, a therapy dog recommended by Dr. Porter, Jack and Diane sat before the fireplace, the warmth of the flames a stark contrast to the chill outside. Warren's testimony secured convictions for Anderson and 3 more key members of the network, Jack reported, reading from Winter's latest update. International operations in 4 countries have been disrupted. They're estimating dozens of children rescued from trafficking situations. Diane nodded, watching Mia's carefree play with the puppy, moments of genuine joy that have been increasingly frequent as the immediate danger receded and stability returned to their lives. "It doesn't erase what happened," she said quietly, "or my role in it, however unwitting." "No," Jack agreed. "Some things can't be erased, only survived." The question of their marriage, whether to formally dissolve it or attempt reconstruction, remained unresolved. They functioned effectively as co-parents, their shared trauma creating a bond that transcended the betrayal that had preceded it. But rebuilding trust was a longer, more complex process than either had initially understood. "I spoke with Dr. Porter yesterday," Diane said after a comfortable silence. "She says Mia is making remarkable progress. The nightmares are less frequent, and her anxiety scores have improved significantly." "I've noticed," Jack replied, watching his daughter's uninhibited laughter as the puppy licked her face. "She seems more like herself again." "Dr. Porter credits you," Diane continued. "Your stability, your protection. She says children are remarkably resilient when they have at least one secure attachment figure they can trust absolutely." Jack absorbed this silently, the simple observation carrying profound meaning. Through everything, the betrayal, the danger, the necessary violence, his relationship with Mia had remained his anchor. Whatever else had fractured in their family structure, that core bond had held firm. "And us?" he asked finally, the question encompassing everything unresolved between them. "What happens now?" Diane considered carefully before answering. "I don't know if we can go back to what we were. Too much has happened." She paused, gathering courage. "But I'd like to find out what we could be going forward, if you're willing." It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation, not yet. But it was an opening, a possibility neither had been ready to consider in the immediate aftermath of Warren's initial exposure. The shared crucible of danger and protection had forged something new between them. Not the naive trust of their early marriage, but something potentially stronger, tempered by adversity and survival. "One day at a time," Jack suggested, extending his hand across the space between them. Diane took it, her fingers intertwining with his. "One day at a time," she agreed. As snow fell gently outside their mountain sanctuary, the Mason family continued their gradual healing, not returning to what had been, but carefully constructing what might be. The threats that had nearly destroyed them had been neutralized, the predators who had targeted them contained. What remained was the patient work of rebuilding, a family changed by trauma, but not defined by it, finding its way forward into an uncertain but hopeful future. Mia's laughter filled the cabin as her puppy performed an enthusiastic but uncoordinated trick. Jack and Diane laughed with her, the sound carrying notes of genuine joy that had been absent for too long. It wasn't a perfect ending. Life rarely offered those, but it was a beginning, forged from the ashes of what had nearly been lost. And for now, for this moment of peace hard-won through sacrifice and determination, that was enough. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.